Barbarous introduction, the story of the Pleiadian transmissions. In late fall of 1994, a hologram of light appeared in my head, which was familiar to me as a reception of consciousness from unseen dimensions. I call these thought atoms, or monads, and they have initiated my previous books. Yet the 1994 monad was significantly more complex than previous ones. It emitted a very high-frequency sound that was higher than my own audible range, and I could also feel it as vibration. This put me on edge, because it felt alien and seemed to be beyond my intellectual abilities. Before this moment, when thought atoms have come into my mind, I have welcomed them because they integrate my brain and push me to write. This particular hologram seemed to be a 20-sided sphere with triangular faces. The 12 intersections of the triangles touched the luminous sphere, where rays of blue-white light were emitted out to infinity. I could not imagine what it was. Today I know that this monad was an icosahedron, one of the 5 platonic solids, encased in a luminous sphere. Lines of light were shooting out from the 12 intersections of its 20 triangles. The ends of the rays emitted strange high-frequency sounds that seemed to be sourced in spinning geometric forms nested within the sphere. That is what I saw, yet in those days I didn't know anything about platonic solids. The sphere was entrancing, it shimmered with an otherworldly perfection. Now that I have studied platonic solids and crop circles, I can see that this vision opened my mind for a new cosmology, a new way to enter the universe. I have also been thrown into a search for its source, a search that still goes on today. In any case, the monad was extremely annoying. The high-pitched sounds it emitted pierced my head. By November 1994, severe tinnitus or ear ringing began, and the outside world seemed to be fading away. I wondered if the Pleiadians, the Ps, were contacting me again, since in the past they'd ring my inner head with various harmonic tones. These tones always got louder if I ignored them. I've been involved in an on and off dialogue with beings from the Pleiades since I was 4 months old, which is described in many of my books. Since they wouldn't go away, I've learned to read their tones, and their counsel has usually been very beneficial. Because of these past experiences, I concluded that the high-frequency sounds must be from the Ps. The tinnitus was more annoying than in the past, so I gathered together a group of people who wanted to question the Ps. In a deep altered state, I channeled answers to their questions, and I hoped this would quiet the tones down. 1. The information in the monad felt scientific and complex, and I sensed I probably could not grasp it in a conscious state. So I simply listened to the sounds vibrating as people questioned the Ps, and I transmitted words out of the tones as if I were a phone translating electrical pulses. The sessions lasted about 3 hours, and thankfully the tinnitus went away, except when I allowed too much time between each session. Our little group completed 18 sessions by March 1995. The tapes were typed and transferred into my computer by an editor, and then I organized them into a book, The Pleiadian Agenda, A New Cosmology for the Age of Light, which was published in September 1995 and became an instant bestseller. Before I go on to discuss what happened after the book was published, allow me briefly to describe the book. According to these Ps, they downloaded the story of Earth's role in the Milky Way. This transmission was from the library of Alcyone, the central star of the Pleiades. The Pleiadians have been deeply involved with Earth over a long period of time, which means they have much knowledge about Earth from a multidimensional perspective. Pleiadian involvement with humans has been detected by archaeologists as far back as 40,000 years ago. The main voice in the book is a saucy Pleiadian goddess, Satya, who describes Earth as a realm that holds 9 dimensions of consciousness that all humans can access. This ability, which was natural for humans long ago, is opening up now. The 9 dimensions are located on a vertical axis that grounds itself in the center of Earth and rises into the galactic center. When we incarnate, our locus of perception is on this axis, which was often called the tree of life in ancient cultures. We can travel up or down the axis, just like Jack climbing up and down the beanstalk in that famous children's story. By starting with the first dimension, center of Earth, we can travel all the way to the 9th, the galactic center. Or, by starting in the ninth, we can return to the first. This really got my attention because I was fascinated by Jack and the Beanstalk and the Giant as a child. I loved the idea that we could climb beyond Earth, yet also return, even if there was an awful ogre waiting up there. Ironically, when I was a child, no one knew there was a black hole in the center of the Milky Way. Satya transmitted diagrams that teach how we can live in our dimension, the third dimension 3D, and access all 9 dimensions simultaneously. She said this was once natural to us, but we lost this skill thousands of years ago. As I was writing the book, I noticed that I understood the first 4 dimensions very well. I had a small grasp of the 5th dimension, and I barely had a clue about the 6th through the 9th. This may reflect the limitations of current science, which usually describes 4 dimensions. My contact with the 5th resulted from my contact with the P's from early childhood. I'd stepped beyond the 4th dimension as a child. In recent years, I've learned about all 9 by experiencing the Pleiadian models with students and listening to their feedback. The lower dimensions 1D and 2D are various levels of Earth 3D from core to surface. The 4th dimension 4D is the realm of collective thought that bridges the physical and unseen worlds, and the 5th through 9th dimensions 5D 9D are celestial. Most scientists will be unable to imagine the unseen realms except by mathematics that reach beyond the 4th dimension, such as topology and superstring theory. Culturally, the first 4 dimensions correspond somewhat to Western spirituality, and the higher ones to Eastern mysticism. Satya's diagrams for accessing all 9 dimensions simultaneously are actually a wonderful integration of East and West. And having this 9-dimensional model helps me as a Western teacher access Eastern mysticism. Our students of the Eastern persuasion have found this system enables them to understand the Western mind better. There is no hierarchy in this system, because in it the celestial realms are not superior to the earth realms. Amusingly, Satya chides the readers of the Pleiadian agenda when she notes that we can only access the higher realms while we are in our bodies. Why go out of your body to find God, she asks. Her system glorifies the beauty of Earth vibrating with galactic resonance. Everywhere, Gaia is permeated by the divine. Satya calls her work Goddess Alchemy. Pleiadian agenda activations. When I first went out to teach the Pleiadian agenda in public, I barely understood the book, which was most bizarre. Yet I was delighted to find I could easily create classes with it, since the book has a very well-designed and simple dimensional structure. As I set up the models and opened the 9-dimensional form for students, some danced or played music to find their body resonance with the various levels. These classes soon became known as activations, because so much spontaneous knowledge flowed in through all participants. In 1996 I asked my husband and partner, Jerry Clow, to join me in adding bodywork and healing during the activations that fall. In 1998, the brilliant composer Michael Stearns created music to help express the 9 dimensions by resonance, since only music can express the higher dimensions in a way we can understand. In 2002, I added a sacred pipe ceremony while we were experiencing the lower dimensions, which enhances and intensifies our resonance with Earth. Today, many of our students teach this material to their own students, and we hope this aspect will grow with the publication of this book. Speaking of our students, I have been profoundly impressed by how much the activations help our students with the most basic aspects of their lives. The students seeking spiritual contact are getting it, those who want improvement in their everyday lives are finding it, and many are finding new ways to transform their cultures. We've even activated a few whistleblowers, since the 8th dimension 8D teaches how to live impeccably in the material world, and the 8D teaching motivated them. It was initially outrageous to imagine that dimensions influenced by distant star systems, the Pleiades in the 5th dimension 5D, Sirius in the 6th dimension 6D, Andromeda in the 7th dimension 7D, Orion in the 8th dimension 8D, and the Milky Way in the 9th dimension 9D can actually inform us here on Earth. Perhaps this is why our ancestors believed the stars had consciousness and were repositories of their stories and myths. Often we wondered, while the world was going crazier by the day, whether the activations would continue until the end of the Mayan calendar. Yet our lives, and those of our students, kept improving, students kept coming, and many of them returned 3 or 4 more times to go deeper into the material. Meanwhile, I began observing changes in our galaxy to see if the timetable in the book was corroborated by scientific events, and it has been. Frequently, the latest developments in science have moved into alignment with Satya's versions, which I call Pleiadian science or dimensional mechanics. Being with students while they access heightened and divine states of consciousness has convinced Jerry and me that these demanding Pleiadians must be listened to. They know something very important about us after interacting with us for thousands of years. They seem to be guiding us through the building chaos, while gently teaching us how to find islands of peace within the discord. Jerry and I have been fortunate to teach in the middle of this wild awakening, mostly because it is fun. We've written this book to transmit as much as we can after living with and trusting the P's. In the midst of this journey, a marvelous convergence of dimensional science has occurred, which has spurred us on and may inspire or intrigue you. We live during days of miracles, when any one of us can access these levels if we want to, provided we first explore how we lost our multidimensional access long ago. How we lost our multidimensionality. My most recent book, Catastrophobia, The Truth Behind Earth Changes in the Coming Age of Light 2001 considers the indigenous records of Earth changes over the last 20,000 years in light of the latest scientific discoveries. Throughout my childhood, my grandfather, Gilbert Hand, trained me in the Cherokee records of Earth. He was adamant that science would catch up with the ancient records in my lifetime, and he passed over his 5 children to give his legacy to his first granddaughter. In 1995, I acquired, as the editor at the publishing house Bear & Company, Cataclysm. Compelling Evidence of a Cataclysm in 9500 BC, by Oxford anthropologist and geologist J. B. Dallaire and science historian D. S. Allen. In it, I found the same science as my grandfather's. I was stunned by the importance of this latest congruence, since the Cherokee, Mayan, and Pleiadian records are so deeply connected. Subsequently, I wrote Catastrophobia to explore how the Great Earth changes traumatize the collective mind of humanity. Finally, I could see why our consciousness is so limited, and why so few people access the unseen dimensions. The truth is, we are a multi-traumatized species. We experienced a great cataclysm only 11,500 years ago, which was followed by thousands of years of horrific survivalism. This is a species-level, post-traumatic stress syndrome, which we are only now ready to understand. While I studied scientific research to write Catastrophobia, I considered the scientific theory lurking in the folds of the Pleiadian agenda. I found some current scientific models that in varying degrees supported and described the existence of the 9 dimensions. There is a scientific model for each dimension, which is the heart of this current book, and I hope that scientists will find these ideas have merit. The emergence of crop circles. As the end date of the Mayan calendar approaches, something has been sending us symbols that are opening multidimensional consciousness for many people. These symbols are called crop circles, which imprint the crops in the fields each summer, mostly in England. The circle makers capitalized because I think of them as divine beings who are making most of the circles herald the total awakening of human perceptual tools, which surely will enhance the viability of Earth's species. The Pleiadian agenda offers much wisdom about the dimensions expressed by the crop circles. Satya says that each dimension has a keeper, which is an intelligence that holds that level in form. The story of the keepers was closely held indigenous knowledge until 1994. Now I am free to share it. I am deeply indebted to my teachers, Hunbat's men, Matthew Fox, J.T. and Michael Garrett, Alberto Ruz Buenfil, Hakim of Giza, and my Cherokee Celtic grandparents. You will learn much about these mysterious keepers in the chapters ahead. We humans, for example, are the chosen keepers of the 3rd dimension, and we are doing a poor job right now. I believe that humans are destroying Earth because we do not recognize our sacred role in the awakening of the Milky Way, our birthplace. Earth is a rare jewel in the universe, and Satya says Earth is to see the whole galaxy with its lifeforms in 2012. She reaches us by awakening these deep memories, Goddess Alchemy, which empower us to remember our roles as keepers of Gaia. In our hearts we know that we are here to bless, not to destroy. According to the Pleiadian agenda, Earth is penetrated by 9 dimensions of intelligence that we all can access, learn from, and consciously utilize in our lives. These levels offer humans extremely enhanced intelligence as well as freedom, yet first we must consider our current condition. After thousands of years of separation from the divine, our collective mind, which functions in the 4th dimension 4D, is caught in a field of polarized, archetypal thought forms that are locked in our bodies and minds as emotional trauma blocks. These days, clever media demons manipulate the 4D collective mind to amuse themselves, make money, capture innocent souls, or merely to avoid looking inside themselves. Yet the 4D zone is not their personal territory, since 4D is a bridge out of the physical to the divine. It is not meant to be an insipid frequency zone that crams our heads with stupid images through advertising, pornography, and internet spam. We need to own 4D as the zone where our feelings can access alluring high-frequency visions. We are all wired to access higher dimensions through images that are time-released from the galactic center, and we can only do this by active intuition and intense feelings. We can locate our personal pathways in the great landscape of cosmic potential by feeling our way in the 4th dimension and clearing our heads of junk images. Our brains are more than tangled cassette and videotapes are computer hard drives. Caught in the current media-soaked 4D zone, most people can't see the portal doors to higher worlds. Our objective as an awakening species is to reconstruct and clear the powerful 4D zone, so as to identify the vibrational frequencies of all 9 dimensions. In sharing the essential 9-dimensional structure of Earth's intelligence with students, Jerry and I have seen how varying levels of spatial and temporal dislocation caused by unresolved trauma, originally sourced in the cataclysm and reinforced by traumatic life experiences, afflict our students and people in general. We feel that we have attained a deep understanding of how this trauma locks people up. Having explored Earth changes of the last 20,000 years and how humans are traumatized by them, I can see that humans cease being violent when they release their trauma and recover their story. They get back into the now, our current space and time. This is why we have healers working during activations. Jerry is a healer who focuses on keeping students in their bodies, and my work is on expanding their minds, as I work with large mental systems such as the 9-dimensional form. This form was drawn as 2 models by the Ps, a diagram of a vertical axis of consciousness, and a canopy of dimensions over a person on a healing table. These models help us understand the dimensional structure itself, as well as show how we receive it in our bodies. Here, I introduce these models, and then each chapter of the book is devoted to an in-depth discussion of each dimension. The vertical axis of consciousness. Through the depiction of a person lying on a healing table, figure I1 shows how we receive the dimensions. The Ps show human dimensional access this way because many of us have first experienced unseen dimensions during healing sessions, such as massages or past life regressions. This is because healers can set dimensional fields with which their clients can resonate. The person in this diagram could also be sitting or walking around, however, most people at this time are not able to be in 9 dimensions while going shopping. The way it works is simple. While we are alive, we exist in linear space and time, 3D, which is a plane, 2D is shown as an isosceles triangle with one side as the 3D plane, and the bottom point is 1D, the iron core crystal in the center of Earth. Using the image of the person lying on the table in the 3D plane, 4D, the collective mind or archetypal realm, forms a canopy over the person's body, which forms out of the polarizing thoughts and feelings of that person. The higher dimensions, 5D through 9D, make portals in this 4D canopy when the person resolves the polarity and activates subtle consciousness. Figure I1. This shows how we humans receive all 9 dimensions. Adapted from the Pleiadian agenda, Barbara Hand Clow, p. 72. This multidimensional model shows how we each perceive the dimensions. The Ps told me to tattoo this drawing on the back of my hand, which was a bit much for me, so I memorized it perfectly. You, too, can avoid tattooing yourself by referring back to this diagram when you can't remember how to contact the 9 dimensions. As we move progressively through the dimensions, I ask you constantly to imprint this simple little diagram. This will reinforce the feeling that you can do it all in your own body. Later, you will see that the circle makers liked this model so much they made at least 3 versions of it in the fields in England in 1997. Figure I2 shows the dimensional structure of the vertical axis of consciousness from the lowest to the highest dimension. To explain the energetics of the 9 dimensions, we must progress from the first dimension to the 9th on the vertical axis. The lowest dimension, 1D, is the densest dimension, and the highest, 9D, is the least dense. The lower dimensions have less space, the higher ones more. Density is governed by gravity, which coaxes light or photons into forms. Feel how intense and dense the iron core crystal, 1D, in the center of Earth must be. According to science, the center of Earth is a huge iron core crystal, and iron crystals are twice as dense as other mineral crystals. The second dimension, 2D, is the area between the iron core crystal and the crust, for example, the mantle. The second dimension is much denser than 3D, Earth's surface. We are solid in 3D, whereas 4D, the collective realm of thoughts and feelings emanating from all living things, is not solid. We all can feel 4D and participate in it, such as by sharing beliefs about history and religion. As we move to higher dimensions, such as being in the heart, 5D, or existing in sacred geometry, 6D, we experience each dimension going up the vertical axis as less dense, more spacious, more complex, and more difficult to explain in words. To move into the higher dimensions, we humans must expand ourselves, and to move into the lower dimensions, we must contract ourselves. We are solid in 3D in linear space and time and have 5 senses. We stay in our realm by gravity, which I called gravity, as a child. Gravity, until we approach it more scientifically, represents the density factor. Gravity also exists in the higher and lower dimensions, and when we go to these levels, our specific gravity changes. Our bodies are located in 3D while we are alive, yet many functions of our energetic systems are stimulated by the lower 2 dimensions, the 1D iron core crystal and the 2D tectonic or telluric realm. We are also stimulated by the 4D collective thought realm, sometimes perhaps too much. We humans are like the center of an Oreo cookie sandwiched between the denser realms of Earth and the emotionally and mentally charged realm of the group mind that changes constantly according to what it's plugged into. To be more explicit, 2D is the denser world of minerals and microbes, and 2D is much slower than our pulse, breath, or thoughts. The second dimension regulates all our autonomic body processes, and our health is absolutely contingent upon our resonance with it. Resonance means that our autonomic processes are vibrating in harmony with 2D, which maintains our physicality in 3D. The second dimension itself is a vibrating, pulsing, gushing world of incredibly complex beings that are the source of our vitality. The P's use the person on the table as their example because this helps us understand how 2D and 4D resonate in our 3D bodies. Here we see figure I.3, a healer standing behind the person on the table and using various energetic techniques to slow the vibrational frequency of the person down to the 2D, maybe even to the 1D level. The healer holds frequencies in his or her own body and helps the person shift his or her frequencies to encourage healing. Healing is the modulation of our frequencies in 3D in ways that encourage health. For example, 2D is the realm where inorganic matter becomes organic, and the beings there create all the codes of life. When we bring the 2D frequency into our bodies, our cells heal, DNA repairs, and blood flows like a pure crystalline stream from a high mountain lake. If the healer intuits that the person's block is emotional or mental, the healer will polarize the energy in the client's body, and a canopy of emotional energy stimulated by the collective field, 4D, will form over the client's body on the table. Figure I.3a healer slowing down the energy fields of the person on the table to encourage healing. Some people feel the canopy is an emotional field that vibrates or crackles. The healer may also feel this. The healer charges this canopy with even more polarity, and the client will begin to see images or feel pain in various parts of the body. Then the healer can help the client bring forth these images to clear the body block by processing the content of the images and any pain that comes up. The person on the table is presenting previously blocked energy that he or she is ready to release, that is, clearing trauma. As you will see later, the higher dimensions become available once the 4D blocks are cleared. The higher dimensions cannot be accessed without resolving polarity in our bodies. Also, the person must understand many things about these higher worlds in order to enter them and stay a while. That material is the essence of this book. Regarding how to read this book, complex scientific footnotes, as well as sources, have been kept out of the text so as to make it more readable. You can find this information in the endnotes section at the back. You will also find a glossary at the end of the book, in case you've forgotten the definition of a word. Please note that each dimension has been described in such a way as to trigger the actual energy of that dimension. We start with the incredibly dense first dimension, and each successive dimension is less dense and more spacey. Therefore, reading this book is like attending your own mini-activation. If you find yourself getting agitated, take a moment to relax, have a cup of tea, and let yourself settle. If you find yourself getting sluggish or sleepy, stretch and take a walk. It might be wise to read one chapter a day in a sacred space as you explore these very powerful ancient dimensional teachings. Have a great journey. Jerry's introduction, The Healer's Quest. I began teaching with Barbara in Crete in 1996. I was one of 9 men in a group of 40 women. We men were celebrated by the women for our bravery, and the women were deeply enjoying being feminine in this goddess-rich landscape. I love Crete. The wooded hills, the drone of the locust in the hot, sun-baked mountains, the buzz of the bees collecting honey in the orchards, the crypt-like chapels in the groves of gnarled olive trees, the black cassocks on the Orthodox priests, the sense of fertility and order, simplicity and time. I'm glad I began my journey here. I tell this story for the benefit of other men out there, and women, who might enjoy knowing how it was for a husband suddenly to be challenged by his wife to wake up and join her in her quest. No, it was not enough that we were co-publishers and co-owners of Bear & Company, a thriving New Age press in New Mexico. Nor was it enough that I had done my own past life regressions, received my own profound healings from alternative therapists, and started to feel energy in my hands and sight in my third eye. Nor was it enough that I was a responsible father to our 4 children and a loving husband to her. She knew, and I knew, deep down inside, that we were on a quest, and the work had just begun. We remembered our joint lifetime in Minoan times, she as a seer, I as a warrior and protector, and how our lives had been cut short by the cataclysmic eruption of Santorini Thera. Perhaps we did have to complete that work of the sacred temple by bringing it to the people. I thought of how salmon gallantly work their way upstream each year, albeit in diminished numbers, yet doing what their ancestors did before them, what their blood codes told them to do. I spent a whole night out under the stars that trip. I puffed through a pack of camels that night, too, to keep me company. I am not a smoker, yet the familiar smell of tobacco and the burning of the match cheered me up, gave me my own momentary bit of starlight. I remember feeling very small on that landscape, as I walked back and forth. What was I to do? Was objecting going to be this hard? What inspired me to take such drastic measures? I am a man who likes his full night's sleep and a warm bed beside my woman, was the sight of Barbara teaching, and realizing who she really was. She was in her prime as a shamanic teacher in those times. Anyone watching her in 9 initiations on the Nile, our initiation video on Egypt filmed in 1994, or who traveled with us in those days knows what I mean. You still see this side of Barbara when she leads us through the 9 dimensions during our activations. She was dressed in a Minoan-style painted silk dress, made for her by an old friend of ours in Santa Fe. She was channeling in public for the first time, having channeled earlier to a private group to create the Pleiadian agenda, and each evening she brought in a new message. The Library of Delos, the Alexandrian Library, the Library of Alcyone, the Grandmother Cave of Crete. With all of my being, I knew she was operating at full potential, and it scared me, because it made me wonder about when and how I would operate at my full potential. Thus the camels and the puffing out under starlight for a whole long night. Well, he who protests loudest, resists strongest. I put up a good fight, but I was skewered, toast, done for. I did my own teaching, attempting to discuss relationships in the Aquarian age, given that I am an Aquarian, like Barbara, and I made the plunge. I had a long way to go, but I had begun. Shortly thereafter, I began my formal training in healing, first at Lily Dale, New York, home of America's oldest spiritualist community, with Reverend Elaine Thomas and healer Tom Kratzley, then in Santa Fe with John Kemper in polarity therapy. I completed my polarity training with John Beaulieu in Stone Ridge, New York, and then embarked on a 2-year training in craniosacral resonance with Paul Vick in Vermont. During this time I began to see clients, first as a hands-on spiritual healer, then as a polarity therapy practitioner, and finally as a craniosacral therapist. I am currently using this training to teach others, clients and students alike, what I have learned and what seems most appropriate to share at these times. I am aided always by a deep memory of when I was a healer and teacher in another time. We call that time Atlantis, but that is not how the people thought of themselves at that time. We were part of a global maritime civilization. Our technology was far advanced from today's, and yes, the end came, through a giant cataclysm with which you are all now familiar. The reason I share this memory with you is to say, we can do this, we can make the critical leap happen, we can return and continue on the path we once followed. Yes, we were all once less dense, and yes, we are moving, through personal healing and transmutation, to that lighter place, where there is more room for the light in our bodies, in our consciousness, and at the same time we are still a part of Earth. My work is now twinned with Barbara's work, we balance each other well. Thanks to my training and my years as an athlete, I love the body, honor the body, begin with the body, the diamond essence of physicality. Barbara, thanks to her tireless self-education and the training from her grandfather, loves the mind, the diamond essence of mental acuity. Together, we treat students the way we treat our family members, each as a unique being, allowing plenty of room for experimentation and growth. As Aquarian teachers, we like to empower our students, let them stand on their own, and see what happens. We like to combine the power of presence with the discipline of detachment. I like to call it active neutrality. I am honored and grateful to be in such a role, and I treasure every opportunity I have with students and clients. These moments together allow me to be at my full potential, which is something we all can help each other achieve these days. Now, I'd like to tell you about the meditations that I have written at the start of each chapter and in my own chapter at the end. They are inspired from my trainings with Paul Vick, the extraordinary craniosacral teacher from London, and the insightful polarity therapy practitioner, Andreas Lederman, from Switzerland, and from my experiences co-teaching the workshops. I am giving you an image to work with, in a meditative state, that will facilitate your movement, mentally and energetically, into the chapter that follows. Here is how I'd like you to work with them. Either read them with your eyes in a soft focus. In essence, turn off your brain's analytical focus and just allow yourself to follow along with the words. You can still read words in such a state, you just don't have to analyze them. Just receive, and respond. Or, you could purchase my meditations for 9 dimensions, see page 277, and then play at the appropriate time. You decide. Part 1: The 9 Dimensions. We all live and express 9 dimensions of consciousness throughout our lives, yet most of us seem to be aware of the existence of only the second, third, and fourth dimensions. The second dimension is below Earth's surface, the third is our solid world, and the fourth is the realm of our collective mind. The first dimension located in the center of Earth is the source of grounding ourselves, and the higher 5 dimensions are where the transcendent parts of our essence exist. These 5 higher levels have been mostly screened out of the fast-moving, technological world we live in, yet without reaching these levels, we cannot find the divine and know bliss. In 1995, with the publication of the Pleiadian Agenda, the Pleiadians came into our world with these 9-dimensional teachings, insisting that this model helps integrate human consciousness as we approach the end of the Mayan calendar on December 21, 2012. Now the Pleiadians have returned to show us how the rich language of our times, science, opens us to multidimensional levels of awareness that were once common to all people thousands of years ago. To honor these Pleiadian gifts, each chapter first summarizes their understanding of how each dimension influences Earth. The rest of the chapter is an explanation of the science or sciences that seem to be operating in each dimension. Exploring the sciences of each dimension deepens, even sometimes clarifies and substantiates, the Pleiadians' assertions about the levels of creative expression available to us. They say we are missing a great deal of the frequency ranges in our world. By necessity, discussions about quantum and superstring theory are very complex, yet this book has been written to make modern science more accessible to the average reader. Perhaps scientists will find that this multidimensional approach to science is of interest as well. 1. The first dimension, the iron core crystal in the center of Earth. Opening meditation. Find your breath. Take your time reading these words. Consider the ink making the letters on the paper you are touching. Consider the paper. How does it feel? Find your breath, and find your feet. Move your head from side to side, and very gently, up and down. Let your head drop gently, softly, toward your chest. Go only as far as it will let you. Breathe into the little stretches you are making. Notice how your breath helps lubricate the stretches. Raise your head back up and take another breath, a long one this time, 5 full seconds in, and 5 full seconds out. Now slowly raise your shoulders up, on both sides, toward your ears. Take a deep breath as you do this and hold it, just as you hold your shoulders up as high as they can go. And then, poof, let out the air and let your shoulders drop. Shake your head a bit to loosen your neck even more, and try another breath, with shoulders up to your ears, and then, again, let those shoulders drop, like lead weights. Don't be afraid to experiment. Sometimes we're really tight in the neck and shoulders, and this takes a number of times to work. Notice where your attention is. You are focusing just on one thing right now, using your breath to help you relax your neck and shoulders. Now, feel gravity. Feel the weight of your body in the chair you are sitting on, or the bed or couch you are lying on. Let yourself feel the weight. Let yourself feel very heavy. Go ahead. This is called relaxing with gravity. Feel gravity like a blanket with little magnetic weights in it. A blanket that has just the perfect amount of attraction to hold you to Earth. Enjoy your blanket. This is your very own gravity blanket. Now find your feet. Where are they? If they are on the floor, begin to feel the floor through all parts of your feet, the edges, the toes, your heels. Take a grip on the floor with your toes, just to feel more connection. If you are lying down as you read this, put your attention on the air touching your feet, and see if this helps you find them. Now find your breath, and find your feet at the same time. Breath, feet, breath, feet. Can you feel the top of your head as you inhale? Can you feel as if there is a tiny air hole on the top of your head? Go ahead, experiment. Maybe the air comes in through the bones of your head, not just through one hole. Just be aware of what's above you, as you become more aware of your feet and your breath. Crown, breath, feet, feet, breath, crown. Good. Now picture a column of white light, of laser beam light, coming from the top of your head to your feet. Take whatever time it takes. Read these words, then close your eyes and picture that column of white light running through your body, from your crown to your feet. Make it bigger, more tangible, with each breath you take. This is your column of white light, so enjoy it. Get to know it. Take your time, all the time in the world. Now, as you begin to feel and see this column of white light, begin to let this column descend beneath your feet, into the floor and space beneath your feet. Go ahead, keep letting it go deeper and deeper. See it entering earth beneath you, beneath your feet and where you are sitting or lying down. This is your column of light, focus on it. See where it takes you. Begin to picture a crystal, a large crystal, the size of a city, at the center of earth. See your light begin to penetrate that crystal. See your column of white light descending beneath you as it begins to shine into this gigantic crystal. Notice what is happening. Take your time. You are very solid now, and you are in the crystal, you are the crystal. See the white light all around you now, bouncing and reflecting off the sides of this gigantic crystal at the center of Earth. You have come home. This is your center. See if you find anything special, just for you, in this center. Take your time. Breathe gently as you do this. Notice the column of light above you, running through your head and back to the surface of Earth. This is your lifeline, your way to the world above. Notice how easily you can move from one place to another, core, surface, core, surface. Notice how easily you can move with just your breath, core, surface, core, surface. You are anchored, yet you can move back and forth, back and forth. Now, as you read these words, pay more attention to your breath once again, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Find your shoulders. How do they feel? Can you find their outer edges, their outer points, where your arms meet them? Good. Now continue to breathe, 5 in, 5 out, and move your neck and head from side to side, up and down, gently. How are you feeling? Are you a bit heavy? Good. You've slowed down to Earth pulses, to the pulses of the iron core crystal. Take your time re-entering your space, drink a glass of pure water. Remember your journey. Write down what you found. Go take a walk, slowly, feel your feet on the ground. Take your time. You have the whole rest of your life to live. According to the Pleiadians, whom I refer to frequently as the Ps, the first of Earth's 9 dimensions of consciousness is the iron core crystal in the center of our planet. Satya, the Pleiadian goddess who is the main voice, says that the first dimension, 1D, is the only truly solid dimension in this vertical axis. The second dimension, 2D, the realm between Earth's core and the surface, seems solid because of its powerful magnetism and gravity. We have been getting much information from science lately about the mysterious realm under Earth's surface. In 1994, an earthquake of 8+ magnitude rumbled 395 miles beneath Bolivia. This quake was a boon to seismologists who had installed seismic sensors on opposite sides of the planet to measure faint vibrations going all the way through its center. The chemical structures of rocks, magma, and crystals can be analyzed by studying the seismic waves passing through them. This is called seismic tomography. Since the quake was so deep, these scientists detected and measured the waves generated by the quake that traveled through the center of Earth and out to the opposite side. Excitedly, they analyzed the waves and were amazed by their findings. The center of Earth is a huge iron core crystal that is about 1,500 miles wide and is denser than the surrounding outer core, mantle, lithosphere, and crustal zones. 1. This deep Earth study is one of many scientific confirmations synchronistically released when the Pleiadian agenda was published. What the Ps say about the center of Earth is much in agreement with science, and they also say this information is very important for us now. What they say about the structure of the vertical axis is that the iron core crystal is the primal activator of electromagnetic waves vibrating through the 2D telluric realm, see figure 1.3.2. These waves emerge through the crust, where the material planes of our world 3D are manifested within electromagnetic fields when these waves emerge through the crust and are triggered by electrical frequency waves in the atmosphere. Much more subtly, the fields of life on the surface vibrate faster and faster, triggered by stellar light frequencies, which are constantly arriving on Earth's surface, even though their radiation is screened by the atmosphere. Earth's crust and atmosphere vibrate with the light of divine intelligence from very high dimensions. Figure 1.1 The iron hexagonal crystalline form of Earth's core. Adapted from, The core of the Earth may be a gigantic crystal made of iron. William J. Broad, New York Times, April 4, 1995, C1. The best way to imagine 1D is as a point, the beginning point of all Earth's manifestation, where materialization happens as a result of the planetary spin. Related to this is the fact that at the 3D molecular level, materialization begins with movement or spin. The 1D core origination point eventually ends in the 9th dimension, 9D, in the black hole in the center of the Milky Way. A black hole is formed when a large star dies and collapses under its own weight, and it shrinks down to a dense point called a singularity, which distorts space and time. This great spiral draws all kinds of emanations, planes, and spheres into itself on the vertical axis originating in the center of Earth. The P's say two more things about the vertical axis of Earth. First, all 9 dimensions are totally accessible to humans in 3D, even though there are many other dimensions. For example, the vertical axis, which connects all 9 dimensions, is the 10th dimension, and the P's speak about 26 dimensions in all. We humans do not yet have the mental apparatus to apprehend the universe, although we can feel it as our container. Second, the keepers of each dimension are unique to each system, such as Earth. There are different keepers for the dimensions in other worlds, such as Jupiter, Mars, or Regulus. Other locations generate a dimensional form from their centers, and they have chosen keepers for their dimensions. If you've always felt really connected with another place, such as Arcturus or Aldebaran, these stars may be keepers of other realms that you resonate with. If you feel a great connection with one of the keepers of Earth, such as Sirius, the Pleiades, Orion, or the Galactic Center, then you may be residing in some form in that other realm while you live here. I freely admit that I feel some part of me exists in the Pleiades while I also live here on Earth. This, other, life enhances my earthly data bank, just as travel to another country educates me and makes me feel free to come and go in my mind. As we prepare to enter 1D, let us begin with the realization that all of us share something very special. We incarnated here on Earth to experience life activated by the iron core crystal, known by many as Gaia. What gives Gaia life? Spin creates movement, which causes particles to become waves, then matter is created, and eventually we have life within the cells of our bodies. Yet where does spin come from? Actually, this is all simple from a cosmic perspective. The P's say that the iron molecules in the core crystal pulse because the planet is spinning in orbit while vibrating to all the planets, moons, and asteroids in our solar system, as well as to the Sun itself. All these bodies vibrate by the forward motion of the galaxy as well as its spin, and the galaxy vibrates to quasars, supernovas, stars, and galaxies. The galaxy swishes through space like a plasma wave, or perhaps like a jellyfish or a beating heart. Plasma is slightly less material than gases, liquids, and solids, and plasma holds together by gravity. The orbiting stars vibrate and pulse by orbital spin and forward motion, as the galaxy churns around with its spiral arms that fan out from its hungry black hole. The galactic center is the 1D center of the Milky Way, just as the iron core crystal is the 1D center of Earth. Everything vibrates, which determines the qualities of matter, light, and consciousness. The core is the origination point of Earth's materialization and its transmutation to light in the galactic center. We humans are wired in our brains and nervous systems to vibrate with the whole frequency range of the vertical axis. Figure 1.2 The electromagnetic spectrum chart. Adapted from Electromagnetic Fields, B. Blake Levitt, p. 43. The center of Earth according to science. According to science, Earth's core resonates at 40 Hz or 40 pulses or vibrations per second, which sends electromagnetic waves into 2D, 3D, and beyond. Earth's crust vibrates at 7.5 Hz. By comparison, if we examine the electromagnetic spectrum chart, see Figure 1.2, you can see that we exist as seemingly solid in the frequency range of the visible light spectrum, where solid things manifest at about 10-15 Hz in 3D. In fact, relative to the size of atoms, the distance between one atom and another in your body is equivalent to the distance of a few miles. We are empty inside and made of vibrating waves. Frequencies beyond 3D, such as X-rays and gamma rays, vibrate much faster, and the frequency ranges of higher dimensions eventually become invisible. The incredible truth is that we vibrate with the pulse of Earth, which aligns us with all other beings, including light, in the ladder or chain of existence. This is the vertical axis of consciousness. Also, according to Satya, because we have iron in our blood, we are wired to vibrate with Gaia in our blood. The blood coursing in our veins pulses with the iron core crystal because it has crystalline iron components. This is what makes it possible to be in our bodies and vibrate in other ranges simultaneously. Since the iron core crystal is gravity and we organize by much weaker gravity in 3D, then it is possible to imagine why science describes great distances between each molecule in our bodies. We are empty inside, and something holds all that space together. The higher dimensions, held together by weaker and weaker gravity, are diaphanous. If we ask what started the primal spin, we are asking why we exist in the first place. More important than how it all started, what holds us together? Our glue or physical integrity comes from gravity, the force that emanates from the first dimension. We experience gravity as binding, as allurement, as a formation force, but what adds mystery is the fact that the cells in our bodies are also 1D chains of manifestation. Our cells are intelligent because they vibrate to stars in the universe. As far as how this got started, the P's yawn. They are much more interested in having humans learn to feel the pulses in their blood, which resonate with the center of Earth. If you contemplate the spinning orbits of stars emitting light waves that eventually become sound that creates geometry that directs materialization, you will not care how or when it started or ends. You have existence now, and everything else is a distraction. Ask a cellist where the notes come from, and the cellist will simply keep on playing. The core crystal connects you to everything in the universe, its agenda is gravity, and it pulses in your blood. Many scientists go on and on about how they cannot explain gravity, which is to say they cannot define it as a felt experience. They know that Earth's center is a huge iron crystal, and that iron is more dense than most other metals. They know that things become weightless, gravity lessens, when one rises above the crust of Earth and into space. The P's say that the way scientists talk about gravity is a great example of how their heads are in the laboratory and not in the world. In September 2002, scientists finally measured the speed of gravity, which does travel at the speed of light, as Einstein theorized. The speed of gravity was the last unmeasured constant in physics. 4. Physicists have developed a new observing instrument, the Laser Interferometry Gravitational Observatory, to detect gravitational waves in space, which means many surprises about gravity are soon to come. To summarize and clarify the Pleiadian point of view regarding gravity, the 1D core is gravity, and as it moves to the surface and above, it weakens. All 1D centers in the universe are gravity. The 2D outer core is molten, and deep 2D currents flow under Earth's surface. As the gravity waves emerge from 2D, they respond to electricity in the atmosphere and create the surface electromagnetic fields. Gravity holds all the dimensions together on the vertical axis, rising into the black hole in the center of the Milky Way. Gravity is less dense as the dimensions ascend because the dimensions move out from the vertical axis in great circular planes, which makes it difficult to measure on the vertical axis. Gravity is the central intelligence or center that gives form to the planar matrices of all 9 dimensions, see Figure 5.2. The weaker gravity is, the more complex the dimensionality. In the higher dimensions or hyperspace, gravity travels much faster than the speed of light as measured at 186,000 miles per second. 5. The actual measurement of gravity waves in space will probably confirm this model in the near future. The science of the first dimension. All the dimensions of Earth's chain of being are sourced in 1D, Gaia. Of course, Western science does not conceive of this vertical axis structure from the center of Earth to the galactic center. However, the qualities of the iron core crystal that were discovered by tomographic analysis after the 1994 Bolivian earthquake suggest exactly this possibility. For example, the texture of the huge crystal probably explains many of the mysteries of the Earth's magnetic field. Seismic waves traveling through the center go faster from north to south than when they travel east to west, that is, they transmit at different speeds in different directions, see Figure 1.3. These varying directional velocities are called anisotropies, and measuring them yields fascinating clues about the composition of the great unseen crystal. Since the pressures in the center are 3 million times greater than on the surface, and the iron is solid in spite of the temperature being in excess of 7,000 F, only the final crystalline form of iron, hexagonal, is possible as the structure of this gigantic crystal, see Figure 1.1. One scientist suggested the core is like a huge diamond in the center of Earth. 6. Most important, the hexagonal prism form fits the recent seismic evidence. The inner core may have its own magnetic field, which probably has a different direction from the outer core. This would explain periodic magnetic reversals, as well as the skewing of magnetic field lines, which show a persistent 4-degree tilt. Geometry is the key to dimensionality, as you will see, and to my mind the vertical axis propels out of this huge hexagonal form of the core and emerges through the surface. Point 7. In that sense, there must be trillions of vertical axes shooting out of the hexagonal crystals in the hot center. Each emergence must have a unique pattern on the surface. The spin power of the 4-degree tilt of the whole Earth's magnetic field is the kind of energy that could generate multidimensional planes all the way into the galactic center. In light of what I just described, it is easier to see how Earth may truly be unique in the universe or the Milky Way. Furthermore, the Ps say that the galactic center pulses in resonance with Earth. Recently, scientists have discovered that the black hole in the center of the Milky Way emits X-rays approximately equal to the energy that streams from our Sun. 8. This suggests vibrational connections between our solar system and the galactic center. Letting science go for a moment, I'd like to share what we have learned about the core crystal by traveling down into it during hundreds of activations. Figure 1.3 Evidence for a crystal at the center of Earth. Recordings from earthquakes show that seismic waves take about 4 seconds longer to go through Earth from east to west than they do to travel from north to south. The waves must pass through an object that transmits them with different speeds in different directions. A crystal would have this property. Adapted from, the core of the Earth may be a gigantic crystal made of iron. William J. Broad, New York Times, April 4, 1995, C1. Entering the iron core crystal. From the very first activation, which I led in, America's Stonehenge, at Salem, New Hampshire, on the fall equinox in 1995, the crystal informed us that it has very specific laws. Like any center in the universe, including the DNA in our bodies, the core can only be entered by offering the right prayers. For humans, Earth's center is the ultimate sacred realm, since it is the source of all the lifeforms that have ever existed in 2D or on the surface. Both Earth's surface and the areas deep below are ecosystems that can potentiate lifeforms, and 3D includes the atmosphere, which supports life. During an activation, participants are located in 3D by the medicine laws, the indigenous way of understanding the natural laws of Earth, which are the only way anyone can enter Gaia. To enter the core, participants are taught to orient themselves to the 4 directions: east, west, south, and north. The entrance down into Gaia exists in the center of the 4-directional altar, which is the place where the vertical axis emerges in a specific location. Once participants are aligned to the directions in this sacred landscape, I offer prayers, and then I go into a meditative state and bring the Ps into our circle. The Ps actually conduct the activations. We've discovered that the core crystal is always emitting images, symbols, colors, forms, beings, or coded sounds at specific places on Earth. The Ps translate these keys through me, and then I translate them for the group. Some students can see Earth's frequencies themselves, sometimes they see similar images, colors, and so on, and sometimes different ones. These visions are always unique to the place and time, and I see as many as I can for the group and attempt to translate them. These images somehow help participants shift the frequencies in their own bodies, which admits them to Earth's core. The Ps orchestrate frequencies by color and sound that harmonize everyone, making it possible to enter the core. Once our energy bodies are prepared, the Ps lead us out of our hearts and heads, down through our spines, and then down below our sacred circle into Earth. As the Ps shift the energy frequencies in our bodies, we travel together as a complex energy dynamic down through 2D into the core. Eventually, we pass easily down into Earth's center to explore our primordial source. In each of the activations, I receive a unique set of symbols unlike any other. I think the energetic frequencies of a specific place and time, as well as Earth's core, have constantly changing unique vibratory patterns. I find it fascinating that when we are the most alert mentally, our brainwaves are in the beta range, 40 Hz, which is the same as the frequency of Earth's core. Since the inner and outer cores are the source of surface electromagnetism, often the journey through the outer core and into the inner core is intense. For a few students, experiencing the density can be very challenging. For other students, the experience can be so sacred that it is almost overwhelming. This is why we always have healers available. Yet, if we are to experience all 9 dimensions, we must first resonate with the qualities of the 1D and 2D frequencies. We have conducted many activations at sacred sites and power points where clear access to Earth's center was marked by our ancestors. We will continue to do this ceremony until December 21, 2012, as will many of our students with their own groups. It is our hope that this work will help all humans remember that we are the keepers of Gaia. Jerry and I have learned much about the iron core crystal by traveling in it with people, and many students discover grounding for the first time in their lives by experiencing the core. When the Ps look at humans, they see 7 light centers as our chakra system, 5 are on the body, and 1 is above and 1 below. To them, the first chakra of the human chakra system is the earth chakra, which resonates with the iron core crystal and the telluric realm. This chakra grounds us while we are alive. Figure 1.5. We humans, on the other hand, experience chakras as part of the subtle energetic systems in our body that acupuncturists use for healing, and we experience 6 major chakras located in our body and 1 above our head at our crown. One difference between the Pleiadian and human systems is over the first and second chakras. To the Ps, the first chakra is off-body at the iron core crystal, and for humans, we experience that first chakra as our root or coccygeal chakra. That is why we have labeled the first chakra in the body as our sexual center, which is a combination of the root coccygeal chakra and sexual sacral chakra. Interestingly, the Ps say as our root chakra resonates with the 1D iron core crystal, our sexual sacral chakra resonates with the 2D telluric realm. Likewise, our crown chakras resonate with the 8D divine realm. 9. The important thing to notice, as you consider this illustration of the Pleiadian human chakra system, is that our chakras operate between Earth and the galactic center. Many students are overwhelmed when they see the molecular matrix of the crystalline facets of the core, and some see in it the species and ecosystems that inhabit the higher dimensions as well as the lower ones. Like films in a gigantic film library, all records and memories vibrate in the dense, organic, iron crystal. Sometimes it feels like one drop of rain on a crystal facet could spawn a pristine new Amazon jungle. We've seen Precambrian flora and fauna, and even dinosaurs, at the center, and many have seen magical creatures such as unicorns or gnomes. As in the higher dimensions, there is no time, background noise, or space limitations, and some actually feel in a visceral way the space between the cells in their bodies. We've relaxed in great mountain valleys and primeval forests, and we often hear the words, Garden of Eden. Many of us have felt Earth's true pulse so many times that now we can feel it easily in our own bodies. We have experienced sounds that can be heard at sacred sites, such as stalactites being struck in the Mayan caves at Lal-Tun in the Yucatan. Michael Stearns recorded these resonating stalactites, which the Maya used to connect people to Earth's heart. The sounds of Earth are audible in the music we play for each activation. There is no doubt our distant ancestors were in tune with Earth's core, and attuning with it is probably the key to megalithic science. People living 6,000 years ago moved stones around that weighed hundreds of tons, which suggests they may have mastered a science of manipulating frequencies in objects to change their weight. Reducing the weight of stones by sonics is probably possible, since frequency shifts can cause lower density in objects. The megalithic scientists may have discovered powerful natural laws that are ruled by the iron core crystal and are only now being rediscovered. And they probably knew a lot more about how to work with gravity than we do today. What we have experienced personally in the activations is that the more we resonate with the heart of Earth, the more we open up vast spaces within ourselves. Once we feel less dense, we resonate more easily with the highest dimensions, which makes it possible to detect them. The more we experience traveling through all the dimensions and going into the galactic center, the more we feel how the galactic center pulses with Earth. Students who have experienced many activations are developing themselves on new intelligence pathways, which begin right in the iron core crystal. Since the core contains the memory records of all species and systems, and since these records are encoded in hexagonal iron crystals, attuning ourselves to the 40 Hz frequency range helps us to access these records. The Ps say that all the species, stored in the core can rejuvenate on the surface or in the 2D worlds below if viable ecosystems make a home for them. After great catastrophes on Earth, there is always a biological rejuvenation of species that adapt to new habitats. We seem to be destroying the mental, emotional, and physical habitats of the human realm as we come to the end of the Mayan calendar, yet all the data for life on the surface is stored in the iron core crystal. Also, information in other dimensions can generate new creative options. For example, a gamma-ray explosion from a magnetar, a collapsed star, may have done this in 1998. See Chapter 9. Unique pathways to higher consciousness are now appearing, such as the crop circles during the last 20 years. The most potent pathway for us now seems to be a return to the Paleolithic mind, which was global, ecosensitive, and multidimensional. I believe this because the younger generation represented by my children know this. Specifically, the Paleolithic mind still lives in the core, which holds all possibilities for humans. As the 3D world devolves into chaos during this period, Earth's more gentle, slow, and silent intelligence is regenerating. Using the 7 sacred directions to enter Gaia, the key to accessing this is to work from a chosen center of the 4 directions, to add, above, and below, so as to activate the vertical axis, and then to move your consciousness into your heart center, the 7th sacred direction. This can be done during activations, or in your own choice of sacred space and time. As you will see when we move into 2D and 3D, the core pulses out resonating waves that actually create the dimensions of the vertical axis. These core pulses are the source of energy pathways and systems in the crust and surface. The 2D vital energy pathways, ley lines, vortexes, and water pathways, carry the intelligence of the core and direct 3D ecosystems and habitation patterns. Leaving the core to return up through 2D, we image Earth as a sphere with the core in the center, and we visualize waves of energy moving out from the sphere, through 2D, and emerging as patterns in the crust. These patterns are also responding to light waves from the sky. As we live on the surface, we are constant expressions of these waves. How we materialize as our bodies, how waves become organic, is explored in the next chapter, as this occurs in the 2nd dimension. 2. The 2nd dimension, the telluric world. Opening meditation. Feel your arms on the surface of where you are sitting or lying down. Feel how they make contact with the surface. Feel what is inside your arms, and what is outside your arms. Feel all the tiny things going on inside your arms. Feel all the tiny things going on outside your arms, all around you. Consider all the surfaces you are touching with your body, and with your mind. Your mind observes, notes, it is curious. It just wants to feel, with your body, where you are, inside your body and outside your body. You are not alone. Notice all the life around you, and inside of you. Little tiny creatures that only microscopes can see, you know they are there, even though you cannot actually see them. You know they are there just by the feel of them. You are full of millions of little creatures, little bodies inside your body. They live with you, inside your cells, inside your molecules, in your blood, your skin, your tissues, your bones. Feel, get in touch with the creatures outside your body, in the air, in the water, in the ground. See where they come from. See their source. See how many of them there are. See if you can even begin to imagine how many there are. Now, begin to notice the creatures you like, the ones you feel good about, the ones you feel close to. And, if you can, notice the ones that you cannot see so well, that you don't feel as close to, that seem to be there visiting, the uninvited ones, like hobos sleeping under a bridge at night. See, with your expanded, observing, all-intelligent mind, if you can find a way to speak with all these creatures. See with the power of intention, or with the power of just knowing and observing, if you can contact them. Like sweeping them with a great light from the beacon of your brain. See if they pay attention. Go ahead, give it a try. Be creative, no one else is watching, just you. See what you can do. Go on doing this for as long as it takes to get in touch with these creatures. Find out ways to do this best. Try sitting very still, or lying on the ground in a safe sunny place, and let your body find its creatures, those on the inside, and those on the outside. Notice how the creatures on the inside seem connected to the ones on the outside, and those on the outside to those on the inside. Notice the families, clans, alliances. Get to know them by feeling them and seeing them with your incredible sight. When you are ready, bring your attention back to your present moment. According to the Pleiadians, the second dimension, 2D, is the realm between the iron core crystal and the curved crust of Earth. The keepers of 2D are the elementals, radioactive, chemical, mineral, viral, and bacterial intelligences, who are trillions of workers who maintain this dimension. The same elements all exist in 3D, although with less density. This means that it is easy for us in 3D to comprehend the qualities of 2D and resonate with them intentionally. This zone is often called the telluric realm, the outer core, mantle, lithosphere, and inner crust, because it contains and expresses the great inner earth forces that vibrate out from the core. By Earth's spin, these forces rise toward the curved surface and then are changed in 3D by powers in the atmosphere. The 2D realm is incredibly dense and intense, yet it vibrates more slowly than the core. It is held in form by gravity while being pulled to the surface, where Earth's sphere expands out into the solar system by the power of Earth's spin and orbit. Earth's core, although generating gravity and vast in size, functions geometrically as a gigantic, hexagonally structured iron crystal, see Figure 1.1. In 2D, lines of materialization are generated that evolve forms in 2D and 3D. The 2D crystals, metals, rocks, magma, bacteria, and viruses are the source of surface life. The Ps insist that surface life first began in 2D. Due to great compression, the telluric world exudes extraordinary powers, which have powerful influences on the surface. Having evolved out of 2D, we humans still resonate with it by cords, made of different elemental forms that reach into our four bodies of consciousness: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. The crystals, elements, and minerals that comprise our physical bodies are symbiotic with the 2D elementals. It is potent to think of them as your ancestors, or to conceive of your body within your skin as 2D and your outer body as 3D. The Ps say our blood is a 2D crystalline realm, which is physically and energetically alive as a flowing multidimensional connector pulsing with the iron core crystal like a great river system of flowing energy. This flow of 2D forces is exquisitely responsive to all the higher dimensions. When you know things, you are feeling this field, and such information is of a high order. The second dimension is contained by the spherical curvature of Earth's surface, which causes it to be a pressured realm of life. The forms of 2D and 3D are direct reflections of all the higher dimensional intelligences on Earth's vertical axis. In that sense, we are created in God's image. The dense spherical geometry of 2D draws the higher dimensions down by the magnetic force swishing and churning in the hot, molten outer core. This enriches the planes of the higher worlds, the subtle dimensions. The second dimension is much richer and more brilliant, ancient, balanced, powerful, and conscious than we imagine. For most people these days, 2D is a dead world to be mined, exploited, and processed for the needs of 3D.1. Yet the Ps say this world is the source of life, and harmonizing with it heals and enlivens the surface. Thousands of years ago, people believed in the powers of 2D, and they intentionally aligned with them by means of an ancient science, geomancy. The ability to relate to the consciousness of the telluric is an ancient art, alchemy. The Ps also warn that the power group that works to control the world of politics and finances, the global elite, the elite, is trying to harness 2D so it can control the world. See Chapter 4. A crisis looms for Earth's inhabitants because the telluric realm will erupt in response to humans using and abusing its sacred powers. It always does. The 2D elementals have very specific desires and powers in relation to 3D. The elementals, who are the keepers of 2D, engage us by resonating with our energy vibrationally through the chemical, radioactive, mineral, crystalline, and biological essences in our bodies. By the laws of the vertical axis, all dimensional intelligences are interdependent and connected by resonance, vibrational frequencies that respond by octaves, such as middle C to higher C on the piano. When the essence of one dimension is diminished, resonance in all the planes of the vertical axis is reduced. When this happens, as it is now by humans bringing too many 2D elements to the surface, the higher dimensions infuse the lower worlds with great powers, which can cause 2D to erupt. These days, the inhabitants of 3D are having difficulty with this intense energy. For example, microbes are erupting. Yet active microbes and viruses are also a sign that 2D is reformulating. The lifeforms in 3D are incredibly delicate and complex, since they exist on the curved surface of Earth within the atmosphere. The same delicacy and balance exist in 2D, even though this world is intense and chaotic, expressing itself with volcanoes and earthquakes. The diversity we see on Earth's surface is formed by the complex world within interacting with higher dimensions. All that matters to the 2D elementals is that the biological, chemical, mineral, and crystalline forms of 3D resonate with them. They are our ancestors that hold memory. The surface is impulsed by many higher dimensions that link directly with 2D through force fields on the surface. The Ps say that humans will not protect these inner worlds until they realize they live on a delicate blue sphere that is the skin of a live universe within. Our blue sphere expands geometrically ad infinitum by conscious linkage and total connection with the universe. Earth's surface transforms into a vibrating film of complex intersecting points of spherical geometry that orbit and spin in space when Earth's surface connects with the higher dimensions. Since the Platonic solids, 5 geometric forms that are the basis of all matter, direct the surface lifeforms, then certainly these 5 primordial geometric forms must be the creators of Earth's sphere. Miraculously, we are wired by our 5 senses to apprehend all of this matrix. Once we remember that we emerged out of 2D, we will naturally seek primal symbiosis with the lower worlds. Then by our consciousness, we will flow frequently in the higher realms again. The Ps insist that this is the natural way for human life. The big question is, how did we lose this vital link to life itself in the first place? The history of humanity being trained to fear the earth. Humanity has been taught to fear and be alienated from 2D by the Roman Catholic Church, a union of politics and religion, Caesar and Church. Around 500 AD, the Church was run by a cabal of ambitious alchemists and geomancers, who wanted to turn the people into dreaming sheep. The controllers of Judeo-Christian systems have been using alchemy and geomancy for 2,000 years, while they've murdered those who dared to use these powers themselves, such as the Cathars and the Templar Knights. Point 2. However, according to the Mayan calendar, it is time for all people to master these powers in order to harmonize with 2D, because 2D will be totally revitalized by 2012. Alchemy is the art of understanding resonance, which makes it possible for humans to materialize things by raising or lowering frequencies. Geomancy is the art of working with the powers of Gaia in order to harmonize with Earth's frequencies. When alchemists and geomancers become adepts, occasionally they have used these arts for greed and personal power. This is sometimes irresistible because we humans really can be healthy, wealthy, and free by aligning with 2D. If you doubt this, check out the Vatican art collection and library, or notice how some humans get rich quickly, mostly because they are very creative. The Ps do not judge this, they simply say that alchemy is not meant to be a tool to get rich, taking Earth's elements for gain. Alchemy is a tool for being multidimensional, or conscious with the elementals and stars. Using alchemy correctly, humans become free, which in turn frees the elementals. Psychics, for example, never need telephones to know what they know. That's because they are in touch with the elementals. You can easily see what others are doing with these powers by observing the results. When too many humans overuse Earth's powers to become rich, 2D will generate a meltdown, it will make people or the atmosphere sick and the land will go fallow. The Great Plagues during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance were examples of 2D responses to the Inquisitions. The second dimension always wins. And if people try to steal these powers, they often die unnatural deaths, such as modern chemical manufacturers and scientists getting cancer. Notice the number of cell phone users who are getting brain cancer. Point 3. Another large example is the sexual and financial perversion in the Roman Catholic Church, which is the natural result of its phenomenal geomantic and alchemical sins. When the Church spread itself all over the planetary sphere around 500 AD, it built its churches on the ancient power places, or sacred sites, which are capstones of 2D telluric forces that draw down the higher dimensions. These churches were designed to be the houses for their alchemical systems so they could harvest the human spirit. A hideous deformation of the human spirit, blood manipulation, has been perpetrated for the last 1500 years, which needs to be clarified because the Caesars and the Church have enslaved the elemental forces to control the people. Here's a brief history from a Pleiadian perspective of how this manipulation took place. It started around the end of the Age of Aries around 2160 BC to 60 AD, which was humanity's first age of warfare. Before 2000 BC, there is little evidence of massive armies and warfare, just mere camp robbing and sacking. When the Age of Aries ended and the Age of Pisces began around the time of Christ, the alchemical powers of human blood, after thousands of years of animal sacrifice and the ritual of the seasonal dying god, were already thoroughly understood by the early Church Fathers. Point 4. Considering the plight of humanity during the previous 2000 years, the Caesars and the theologians identified the ultimate tool for controlling the human spirit, blood. Point 5. Like any group that wants to command a territory, they made a plan and then created a timeline to further their aims. This plan required teaching the people to fear 2D, since it is the source of their personal power, freedom, and health. Point 6. At this time, 2000 years ago, people resonated with 2D at power places by celebrating with the seasons, planetary cycles, and the moon. Healers and shamans understood the correspondences between minerals, plants, animals, and crystals, and they employed these potent analogues to heal individuals, groups, and the land. They knew that people must be in resonance with the telluric to survive the potent energies on the surface as well as cosmic powers. They practiced alchemical and geomantic arts to maintain health, happiness, harmony, and wealth. Point 7. They thought of the elementals as the workers and poets of the inner earth who make everything possible on Earth's surface. The Church had to break the people's connection with these arts and powers by making them fear the inner earth. Point 8. So they ranted and railed about hell and the devil, seductresses in the night, and evil dragons and demons. They ended the seasonal festivals and murdered the healers and shamans, except for the ones who were working inside the church or for kings. People were taught to trust the priest and fear the witch. They were told to believe that their soul is in heaven and not within earth. Now the tide has reversed. Many people realize the priest in the confessional or rectory is more dangerous than any witch stirring her cauldron or casting her spell. When the Caesars and the Church plotted to take control of humanity, they decided the people would never forsake Earth and run into the sheep pen unless they were manipulated through their blood, the ancient practice for controlling people. This work was accomplished in many ways. The blood rights of women fertilizing Earth were condemned, and blood was spilled on Earth during mass warfare for 2 millennia. This plan culminated in 2 horrific world wars. The people's connection with the potent dark forces of the inner Earth was broken. When 2D elementals, coded to resonate with us in prayer and ceremony at power places, are abandoned, they dry up and abandon humanity. At this time, almost no one can imagine the exquisite peace and harmony that prevails on Earth when 2D resonates by means of human joy and ceremony. Meanwhile, these forces were secretly culled by the inner circles of the elite. If you doubt this, see Stanley Kubrick's final film, Eyes Wide Shut, which shows how the elite inner circles use sacrifice and sexual rituals to control the world today. The consummate power play that used the power of blood at the beginning of the Age of Pisces was the invention of Holy Communion. For thousands of years before the great teacher, Christ, came to Earth, people were often manipulated by priests using various forms of blood sacrifice. Masses of people were taught to obey, since any form of sacrifice takes away human will. The Church created Holy Communion based on the ancient sacrificial rituals, with Mount Moriah, the sacrificial hill in the Temple of Jerusalem, as the center. Point 9. In the new ritual, the nexus point of Christ's life, his transfiguration, was crafted as a sacrifice. When Christ wanted the apostles to see his essence, he allowed them to watch him raise his frequencies until he transfigured into light. This miracle explicitly described in the Bible was a big problem for the church, since Christ's transfiguration shows any one of us how to become enlightened. So they melded blood sacrifice, changing the wine into the blood, which they called transubstantiation, with higher consciousness, i.e., Christ, changing into his light body, which they called transfiguration. 10. By this ritual, the blood codes of Christ, and therefore those of humanity, sucked the higher dimensions into the lower worlds. This is a classic form of possession, in which a higher energetic is sucked into lower vibrations, and people seeking the higher frequency get possessed by lower energy. The practice of Holy Communion over the past 2,000 years may also have transmuted the lower world with light. However, mixing blood sacrifice with transfiguration cut most people off from both the light and the inner earth. 11. Most of us are profoundly separated from 2D, yet now we must reconnect energetically. Cut off from this link, humans began exploiting the elemental world by mining 2D metallic elementals. These mines were initially small, even though the Roman Empire may have fallen due to pollution from the lead mines. When the amount of mining was small, Earth transmuted the displaced elementals by water, temperature, and seismic movements. But in the 18th century, the balance was tipped. Great male-dominant control forces instigated global mining. In the 19th century, oil was sucked out of Earth and burned on the surface. Chemical and radioactive manipulation was the specialty of the 20th century, and mining, frequency waves is the agenda of the 21st. Whenever 2D powers are consumed in 3D, great elemental imbalances are incurred. However, such abuses can be corrected by scientific advances in transmutation as well as by people taking back their spiritual powers. Reconnecting with the second dimension. Access to the higher dimensions is being rebuilt by many people. Group thought forms are transmuting disturbed elementals by love, which is a regular practice of indigenous people. Anyone can pray and do ceremony with 2D, which is very enlivening. At the time of the new moon each month, the vertical axis transmits higher dimensions directly into Earth. During this potent transmission time, 2D metallic elementals respond vibrationally to stellar light. This light, as a potent multidimensional connector, vibrates in our blood and makes us very psychic. When we are psychic, we naturally resonate to dense telluric energy, we know our path. This is why I have often taught new moon meditations and continue to analyze the qualities of the new moon on our website. The microbial elementals are constantly informing us about everything we need. When I feel uncomfortable or even sick, for example, I slow my frequencies down to the 2D level, and the right healer, substance, or exercise becomes apparent within hours. Scientifically, it is possible to transmute elementals that have been sucked into 3D and are polluting our bodies and the atmosphere. Once people understand the dimensional laws, there will be a massive economic boom based on transmutation technologies. Our New Moon clan in New Mexico often conducted meditations to transmute radiation, another elemental, around Los Alamos National Laboratory during the 1980s. The reason we must understand our relationship with the lower realm is because 2D vibrates in our bodies whether we know it or not. When we resonate with lower dimensional forces unconsciously, archetypal forces can take over our minds. We can be overwhelmed and controlled by others, which is why the Judeo-Christian system encourages fear instead of respect for the dark, yet we need to know the dark. When you can feel differences by density, you can use these forces as you wish. This ability can be taught, which is one of the main goals of activations. When I feel any nausea, dizziness, or unease, I slow my vibrations to see if any viruses or bacteria have made their way from 2D into my body, or if there is an emotion or thought I must clear. If I discover bugs, I think of myself as a hotel, and I'm willing to commune with the visitors. However, I insist they spend a short vacation with me, and they are not allowed to multiply or take over the ballroom. I do not nuke 2D lifeforms with antibiotics. They can have a short vacation in my field, as long as I don't get an infection. Consequently, antibiotics would work very well if I ever needed them for an extremely serious infection, since I am not antibiotic resistant. The elite uses the internet and the media to inject unrecognized dark forces into people to cull their energy into the latest scenario of fear. This weakens our minds. These technologies are metallic, and since we are not accustomed to these new frequency ranges that bombard us, we are open to forces we don't recognize. Point 12. If people can feel and identify vibrational frequencies, even these new potent metallic ones, fear is eliminated. We know this is possible because we have seen our students accomplish this. Our hearts need to be strong during the latter days of the Mayan calendar, since we are witnessing unspeakable atrocities. Becoming insensitive is not a solution, and true empathy cleanses collective pain. No one who respects 2D plays around with pornography or the media. Both feed slavery and violence in the collective mind. These things make human blood resonant with dark forces, which can possess the collective mind. The elite uses the 4D collective mind to rule us in 3D, yet all you have to do is turn the dial to off. Figure 2.1. A great tree with 2D is the roots, 3D is the trunk, and 4D is the canopy that accesses 5D to 9D. The Ps insist we must now reject war in all ways, since spilled blood feeds these dominant powers. This is a deep pattern that is thousands of years old, is based on blood sacrifice, and now is manifesting in medical practices. We must avoid having our blood drawn and needled into other bodies except in dire emergencies. Notice that great amounts of blood were drawn for weeks after 9/11, even though there were no survivors that needed it. These practices are tools of the dominant ones that have little to do with your personal well-being. You do not have to volunteer for any of it. No one has to donate body parts, since transplants are a vile desecration of our physical inner worlds, and animal parts are not to be implanted in human bodies, since humans are not animals. These issues are very unpleasant and painful, yet the Ps say we must stop being so stupid because dimensions are being rent as our bodies are assaulted by medical practices that will someday be deemed barbaric. A useful Pleiadian image for the structure of 2D through 4D is the tree. See Figure 2.1. Regarding the tree, 2D is the roots, 3D the trunk, and 4D the branches into the sky. The tree is the plant realm's closest analog to a human. Trees cannot move around, and each thriving tree has discovered its own sacred site. In that place, the tree draws energy from the core and allows gravity to suck its roots down into 2D. Here it seeks water and minerals to grow straight and strong in 3D, while its canopy radiates feelings to the sun. As the tree is attracted to the light, the canopy of the tree spreads. All the divine forms and dimensions shiver with the tree's ecstasy, as it shoots powerful energy into earth. This is how we humans should exist on the surface, yet we can move around. We can travel from sacred site to sacred site resonating with the elementals, which is how our ancestors lived in 3D, while resonating with the lower world. We can tap into the vertical axis anywhere we want. The science of the second dimension. I am comfortable with the idea that elements are alive, yet the Pleiadian description of 2D seemed very bizarre. Orthodox science at the time said that the inner earth is mostly inorganic and changes by tectonic forces that build and wane. Certainly, science has never said that human blood resonates with the inner earth, or that our inner bodies are like the inner earth. Still, I was puzzled and impressed by the power and vitality of the Pleiadian description of the inner earth, and also very wary. Adolf Hitler tried to take over the world and control human genetics based on his scientists' beliefs about the inner earth. Many fanatics have gone off the deep end about the inner earth, a world some call Agartha. 13. Fortunately, there is at least one contemporary researcher who understands the uniquely creative powers of the first dimension. In the Deep Hot Biosphere 1999, written by the brilliant 20th century scientist Thomas Gold, the entire crust down to several miles is found to be populated with living creatures that have been examined in deep ocean vents and rifts in active volcanoes. This world beneath the surface, Archaea, is a fully functioning and robust biosphere that feeds on primordial hydrocarbons. Near the surface, photosynthesis developed offshoots of this subterranean life that progressed to the surface and evolved a way to use photons to supply chemical energy. Once the conditions for surface life, temperature, water, filters of solar radiation, and reduced cosmic bombardments, occurred, the surface life exploded. That is, Gold says that hydrocarbons are not biology awakened by geology, they are geology reworked by biology. That is, surface life is the descendant of life deep within Earth. Where the deep hot biosphere gets very hot, indeed, is with Gold's theory on the creation of oil, the deep earth gas theory. We were all taught that the oil fields were created when dinosaurs and vegetation fell into piles and rotted, which created reservoirs in the deep earth. Either way, since 1860 oil has been considered a non-renewable resource, which is simply a story that has been disproved by Thomas Gold. He is well known and respected for his deep earth gas theory, since subsequent science is verifying it, and it is exactly the same as the Pleiadian description of 2D. According to Gold, beginning with the creation of the solar system, the planets accreted, are formulated as solid bodies from the solids that had condensed from a gaseous planetary disk. During the early stages of Earth, as melting occurred, melts of higher density, such as iron, which is twice as dense as rock, sank toward the center, and materials of lesser density moved upward and formed the crust. The heat that generated this was from radioactivity in the disk, and gravitational compression sorted out the materials by density. This once liquid Earth contained enzymes, which are catalysts for biochemical reactions. From these enzymes, a huge microbial biosphere, which eats petroleum and gives it the signature of life, exists at least 5 miles down. Down even deeper, there is a transition to zones that cannot harbor life. Oil wells do not drill down this far, hence all oil shows biological enhancement, which is where the rotting dinosaur theory came from. Chemical analysis shows that expressions of life on the surface and the deep realm almost certainly have a common derivation, since both have the same genetic signature. Regarding oil, hydrocarbons have existed deep in Earth since it accreted. They well up to the surface through holes and cracks, which allows microbial life to flourish, and they ooze into pools that are captured under domes created by ideal geological formations in the crust. Gold's deep earth gas theory has been totally substantiated by testing the oil fields, which are filling up as they are drilled. Oil is a renewable resource. It would seem that the Americans intuit this, judging by the cars they drive and the houses they live in. It would also seem that the best domes that pool the oil are the most valuable, possibly the dome under a rock is an especially good one. The public needs the correct theories on energy resources, since what we're being told is grossly outdated, while the elite makes plans and money for itself. The inner earth is a rich and live realm loaded with energy and consciousness, which offers new horizons in healing and awakening for humanity. Gold's deep hot biosphere supports most of the Pleiadian description of 1D and 2D, and contradicts none of it. This affirmation of Pleiadian science by one of the top 20th century scientists makes me take the Pleiadian view of the higher dimensions much more seriously. There are many scientific theories about the subtle worlds yet to be discussed in this book, however, nowhere has science better verified channeled material than in Thomas Gold's brilliant and totally scientific description of the second dimension. 3. The third dimension, linear space and time. Opening meditation. You are free and floating on your back on a warm body of water. There is water under you, air above you, and you are relaxed, safe, and content, as you float perfectly on this body of water. Your head is relaxed, heavy, supported. Your thoughts are slow, and all you have to do is to notice things, observe things going on inside your head. See what you can see going on in there and in the rest of your body. Take your time. Did you know that you have 4 brains inside your head? First, let's find your reptilian brain. It is down low, at the base of your cranium, deep inside, protected, and ancient. Your reptilian brain knows, it is instinctual. It listens to your body, perched right there close to your spine and neck and to the rest of your body. Your blood supply goes right through it. This brain is wise and gives you insights, as long as you listen to it. It knows touch, hot and cold, and wet and dry. It knows what is good for it and what is not good for it. Next, find your mammalian brain. It sits above, and wraps around the edges of, your reptilian brain. It knows when you need to fear, and when not to, when to run, and when not to. It uses the powers of sight and scent to find food and safety. It uses the powers of discernment to decide what action to take next. It warms when it has companionship with others. Now, let's find your human brain. It's right there through the middle of your head, front to back, wrapped over your mammalian brain like a sheathing, like an insulation, like a second growth, a second thought, opening a new possibility. It came about through thousands of years of discernment, and wanting to remember those discernments. It wants to store bits of information as food for thought, like a squirrel saving acorns in the ground. Notice thoughts. This brain has many of those. Brilliant bits of energy bursts, shooting through these circuits at close to light speed, thoughts. Finally, let's find your neocortex brain. It is the extra stuff in front, behind your forehead. You feel it like an energy burst there. It pulses when you have an especially brilliant insight or vision. It loves ideas and ideals, the things you want to create, to see happen in your life or in the lives of those you know. Sometimes those ideals become real, and our neocortex warms our foreheads, causing our whole face to relax and a smile to form on our lips. See if one is ready to form on yours. Now come back to floating on the surface of the water. Feel the sun rise in the sky and warm your head. Feel the four brains inside your head, and enjoy the feeling of new understandings. Return your focus, so you can begin to read once again. The third dimension, 3D, is the dimension of linear space and time that we humans live in with other biological creatures and plants. We humans are the keepers of 3D, and the Pleiadians say there is much more going on in this world than most people realize. I've noticed that the Pleiadian description of 3D is the same as my childhood understanding of 3D, which comes from my Cherokee and Celtic grandparents, and which was confirmed by my adult study with various indigenous elders. From this perspective, many worlds operate in 3D. In the dimensional scheme, 3D is the zone where the physical and non-physical dimensions intersect. The physical realms, 1D through 3D, are measurable, and all the non-physical realms, 4D through 9D, operate as subtle frequencies in 3D. These non-physical realms are experienced, for example, having archetypal thought patterns as a way of being in 4D, or seeing geometric visions in 6D. As the P's see it, our bodies are held in form by frequencies that vibrate physical matter. We are oscillating, vibrating beings of light. According to quantum physics, our bodies are much more filled with space than matter, and we are slowly comprehending this new definition of ourselves. When our consciousness vibrates in 4D, such frequency ranges are not solid, yet they feel very real. For many people, experiencing 4D feelings is more intense than feeling their own bodies. The potent emotional energy of a really angry person often seems greater than the energy in this person's physical body. Thus we become very aware of 4D frequencies in 3D, especially in our childhood homes. When we mature, many of us realize that we are living out a complex story, a great drama that is much orchestrated by our feelings. The P's and most indigenous teachers say in 3D we are mostly asleep, while we use most of our energy trying to avoid feelings. Meanwhile, feelings are our access to enlightenment. This is why indigenous teachers and the P's like to awaken us from our sleep and encourage us to get used to intense emotions. They say that if we learn to orient ourselves by feelings in 3D, we will be able to explore 4D with confidence. We are more aware when we know our personal stories. These stories entice us to feel the full range of our emotions, and then the frequencies of the higher dimensional realms can be detected. Each one of us is a magical being journeying in the field of an immense, cosmic oriental carpet, the third dimension where the physical and non-physical intersect. This is what 3D looks like from the higher dimensions. Our ability to be fully present during our journeys is the key to navigating time. What is time? Time in 3D, by the frequency-based view, is simply a locator for past, present, and future. Time is not real, yet we accomplish things by it in 3D. When we use time intentionally, instead of just floating along day by day like a piece of driftwood, we realize that the past is a data bank that is useful in the present moment, or that now. The now is the unique moment in which we can craft our future according to what we already know, the past. Knowing a lot about the past helps, which is why we need our own stories about our journeys in time. The P's say boredom or fascination are the best guides. We are advised to stop doing anything that bores us and to spend all our time creating things that fascinate us. Then, since 3D is linear space and time, what is space? Space surrounding us is comprised of energy fields permeated by all the other dimensions. We can detect and interact with these dimensions when we are located correctly in our bodies, or are grounded. To be grounded, we must open ourselves to the full range of feelings. If you watch people carefully, often they are not clearly located in the present moment, yet you can detect various feeling patterns. For example, in a discussion you may be interacting with a 4-year-old child in the body of a 45-year-old person. The 4-year-old plays out various rages, needs, and demands that were appropriate many years ago. The adult person is immobilized by 4D feelings that rule his or her body. Often for this person, 3D feels like a net drawing ever tighter as time passes along. The truth is, he or she is navigating in 4D and not living 3D, and this gets worse with age. If you watch closely, this person is not physically home, because 4D frequencies outside the current place and time are overamping 3D. Let's explore how this works, since this is the reason most people use so much of their energy to block their feelings. When you incarnated, you were born in a direct line from the center of Earth, your own multidimensional vertical axis. In the beginning, as you grew, your body was like a spiral shell that moved outward, making more curved layers. This maturation of our bodies by morphogenesis, the overall pattern that guides growth, is a miracle that is actually orchestrated by 6D.1. Why then does so much go awry? If it were not for experiencing feelings, you would end up expressing this 6D perfect form. Since you live in 3D, your feelings hone your body according to how you register your experiences in time. Each one of us is a vibrating, oscillating record of our whole life, including our sense of our ancestors and previous lifetimes, which good psychics can see and read. Feelings connect all beings in 3D, thus by participating in this collective, each one of us is caught in time. When feelings are unresolved, they lock you in your body in various stages of your life. You stop flowing naturally in the now. For example, people say, "Oh, my aching back," and if you watch them, they are isolated in their pain. After many years, these emotional blocks disorganize your physical form, and eventually your mind, unless you learn to work on your feelings when your back aches. Eventually, people calcify and end up looking like old crabs or loping wolves. The P's and healers have evolved many methods to help you move through these blocks and back into the now. Remember, the now is the place where you are informed by the past as you create your future. The 7 sacred directions and making an altar. To be in the now, it helps to think of yourself as a point in 3D, a perceptual locator, and become conscious of the 7 directions moving out from your body. Even though your emotional connections are the essence of your life and weave you into the fabric of life, to handle the 4D realm, your orientation in 3D should be by the 7 directions at all times. Begin with the 4 directions in a circle: east, west, south, north. Feel yourself as the center in that 4-directional matrix. At any moment, your front, back side, and 2 sides are facing one of the 4 directions. A traditional way to pray in your altar is to face the east with the west at your back, and north to your left and south to your right. Once you get accustomed to feeling yourself this way, activate the sides of your body to each direction. Your awareness of the rising and setting sun, the source of your vitality and energy, will increase, and your sensitivity to how the poles and the equator relate you to Earth's journey may awaken. Most important, knowing your orientation anywhere and anytime on Earth enables you to feel the spirits of each direction. Energies coming to you from the east are spirits who come to offer you creative guidance for the day. Energies coming to you from the west are spirits who come to show you what you need to transform and possibly throw away. Energies coming to you from the north will inspire you to seek the most challenging outcome of the day, and energies coming to you from the south are spirits who want to support and nurture you. The 5th direction is straight down into Earth, which feeds you with unlimited powers and strength, and the 6th direction is the vertical axis into the sky to all the higher worlds, the gateway to the libraries in higher dimensions. The 7th direction is your heart, your center. When you orient your body in the first 6 directions as instructed, interact with all the energies coming to you, and locate yourself in your heart, you can feel yourself as a vibrating, oscillating body. An artist who sees and paints the human structure this way is Alex Gray, the author of Sacred Mirrors. Like any intentional practice, this orientation to the 7 sacred directions entrains your body and transforms you. Located in the 7 directions as a heart-centered person, you are able to attract to your field what you really want. When your heart and mind are informed by the 6 sacred directions, and your heart resonates with the totality of your energy field, you are fully expanded. Once you experience correct orientation, you will never go back to being contracted, unless you are traumatized emotionally and knocked out of your center. Even then, you can reorient yourself when you are ready. As with any new practice in life, it is best to learn it in a reserved space away from the hustle and bustle of 3D. You should all have an altar space in your house that is oriented to the 4 directions. There you can sit facing the rising sun and meditate, receiving knowledge from east, west, south, north. Then you will easily move your consciousness down into earth and up into the sky and exist in your heart. This space in your house can be very small, or it can be a room with altars at each of the 4 directions. The houses of indigenous people were oriented to the 7 sacred directions, and people were born into this. Altars are repositories of special objects that help you to feel and commune with the energy of each direction: spiritual guides in the east, chaos forces in the west, nurturing spirits in the south, and great record guides in the north. Special objects on your altar also help you to remember your story and the stories of your ancestors. If you create this space and work with it, at least 3 things will happen in your life. Very soon, you will notice that your heart melts and opens just by you sitting in your center, because the structure of your altar activates you right away. Things you struggle with will seem easier when you center in your heart. Next, you will notice that you are orienting yourself by the directions when you are out in the world. You'll become more aware where the sun rises and sets, for example. And once you've meditated a lot in your center and sense your directionality in the world, you will notice that interference by other people in your energy field is alleviated. When you are in your heart center, you are sovereign. Various people and forces drawn to manipulate you, to take your power away, or to harm you cannot affect you while you are in your center. For example, Homeland Security cannot reach into your heart, even if it imprisons our culture. If you are in prison reading this, create altars in your jail cell to access freedom. Once you are oriented this way in the world, invasive influences bounce off you like water. The P's say we all will need these skills in the coming days. Maintaining physical integrity in 3D, the science of the 3rd dimension. The science of the 3rd dimension is Newtonian physics, which I will not cover in this chapter since the laws of physical causality are commonly known. Instead, I will focus on the indigenous laws of physical integrity, the awareness of which is rarely included in modern life. Being fully expanded in 3D is difficult, since usually our bodies have gotten bent out of shape by physical, emotional, and mental stress. Imbalances and blocks can be healed by working with our feelings and minds, as well as our bodies. Here we are interested in what happens in the solid world, in 3D. Imbalances in our bodies, such as incorrect posture or physical problems, are the result of the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual blocks caused by life. You can unlock them at any level, however, our bodies are the most direct access. The great thing about working with our bodies is that pain, reduced flexibility, and illness do not go away until we address what we are feeling. All forms of bodywork can move you directly into a problem, and your body will reveal solutions. Of course, you have to do the work, which is why most people just go to the doctor to get fixed. Our times are bizarre because many people are realizing the doctor doesn't fix them. If you hold with the pain and listen to its message, problems often correct with frequent internal cleansing, good diet, and regular exercise. Allopathic medicine should only be used for surgery or diagnosis, which are sometimes needed. The P's are very wary of drugs, since they bypass the messages your body is offering you and lock the problem deep in your body. The bad feeling goes away because the ailment draws back into deeper levels. Eventually, you become sick, since the underlying cause has not been discovered. Physical ailments are signals of energy imbalances, which can be healed with bodywork, emotional processing, mental reorientation, and spiritual contact. If a condition is hereditary, you have chosen to work on something your parent or grandparents didn't learn from. If you are caught in a family emotional conflict that you haven't identified and processed, and it remains locked in your body, eventually you will assume hereditary conditions. Working with your health is basic maintenance, and it is fun to notice how your physical body reveals your feelings and thoughts. Your body is a miraculous temple of spirit. When you expand the field of your body, you will learn how to move better in 3D, to navigate well in space and time. Many people lose this natural flow and synchronicity when the blocks add up. Practices like yoga, dance, tai chi, meditation, mindful walking, and playing music are essential because they enable you to expand your body into your 6D morphogenic form, which is your ideal incarnational pattern. When you move in 3D, your body is supposed to operate in perfect symmetry with 6D. You incarnated and grew by this special patterning, just like an oak seed grows into a great oak tree. If you maintain this form, you will not often have backaches, arthritis, knee problems, and poor posture. You must have a practice that allows all the parts of your body to resonate with your 6D morphic field. For example, if your knees or hips are creaky, painful, and not bending well, and you take drugs instead of getting your flexibility back by moving these parts correctly, you are already dying in that part of your body. If you put plastic parts in your body, you are plastic in that zone. Of course, some people need to use such parts for a while, yet this should always be the last resort. Cats are the best teachers about moving in symmetry with 6D geometry. They exhibit ideal form, which is why they were always revered by sacred cultures, such as the Maya and the Egyptians. Notice how your cat lies around all stretched out and then gets up and walks around stretching and pulling its limbs. Just as you need to slow down to feel the resonation of your organs and blood to maintain your body, so must you also stretch and move your whole body to keep it linked up with your 6D incarnational form. If you live this way in 3D, you will feel fantastic, and then it will be possible for you to identify blocks whether they are emotional, mental, or physical. The release of physical blocks opens emotional blocks, while your mind apprehends how your body is working with your thoughts. This is complex, and it just so happens that the cycles of the moon can greatly assist your growth. Living on lunar time. The fastest way to deal with blocks in 3D is to handle them right in our bodies. Our ally is the moon, which is part of 3D because we can watch it wax and wane and observe its effects in the world, such as water level changes caused by the tides. All biological species respond profoundly to the lunar cycles month after month, since living things are mostly water. Once the clock was invented a few hundred years ago, humans began dividing time up into hours, minutes, seconds, and moments. Meanwhile, animals, plants, and spirits live by natural cycles. The more humans divide time, the greater the materialization in 3D and the separation from other living things. You may have noticed that your reality is getting too filled up with stuff and that there is less and less room for you. This is because when you divide time, space expands, and eventually your reality will be uninhabitable. Meanwhile, the moon is your best timekeeper. If you will realign with the moon, you can waltz right out of the dilemmas invented by the holy clock. The P's say that the division of reality by the clock is moving toward infinity as of December 21, 2012. The only people who will know they live on Earth will be those living by lunar time. Point 2. The biological realm waxes and wanes by the moon, and when you live by the lunar cycles, time is balanced with space. At the new moon every month, a new story is implanted that is to be played out for the month. For example, take notice of the weather on the day of the new moon. Whatever the weather is, hot, cold, rainy, sunny, will persist through the full moon and beyond. Point 3. Even if you don't know astrology, anyone can feel the qualities of the current story just by tuning in at the new moon. Once you feel the elements, play your role consciously in them as the collective field expands and expands up to the full moon. Then the full moon expresses the energy with a great explosion, like the culminating moment in a Beethoven symphony. Subtly after the full moon, the lunar vibes help us to play with the threads of the story as they weave along. In each year, there are also eclipses, when the moon blocks the sun or Earth blocks the moon. Eclipses attune us to the larger cycle of the moon, the metonic cycle, which is the cycle that relates the moon to the sun. This cycle, which is more than 18 years long, directs a much longer path in life, and informs us when to seek knowledge in the outside world or from deep inside the inner realm. The moon shows us when to shine and produce, or when to swim in darkness and regenerate. None of these cycles require astrology, although it is most helpful. The lunar light guides us very well if we learn to live by its guidance and drop the clock, except for appointments we need to keep. We are not here to divide reality, we are here to integrate reality by weaving the intersections of the dimensions. The 6 polarities on the Wheel of 12. Our dimension, 3D, manifests many worlds in physical forms. Yet, while we live in our world, often we are torn apart by dualities. Because so many worlds manifest here by passing through the emotionally polarized fields of 4D, we perceive issues as either or, black or white, good or evil. When considering a dilemma, one side or the other is just a range of possibility. Since dimensionality is so subtle and rich, this great polarity system exists to connect and widen our feelings sufficiently. Then the higher dimensions open more, and we can feel ourselves being impulsed by advanced beings. Like the holy clock, we can divide everything by defining our belief as this or that. Yet then we've lost the whole range in our consciousness because we've stuck ourselves in one collective mindset. The P's say this is limited imagination, which didn't matter so much in the past. Now that the end of the Mayan calendar approaches, duality is splitting our world. The P's offer a tool that I've found helps most people to expand beyond duality, the circle divided into 12 parts that functions as 6 living polarities in our lives. 5. This wheel enables us to pull ourselves right out of the archetypal 4D field to get a wider view and ground ourselves firmly in 3D. This wheel teaches us to balance our consciousness by observing polarities with wisdom. Figure 3.1. Figure 3.1 The Wheel of 12. Adapted from The Liquid Light of Sex, Barbara Hand Clow, pp. 41-50. Intentionally using the 6 polarities, self, other, grounding, letting go, integrating in 3D, integrating with spirit, feeling power, creating, giving, be here now, bliss, is the ideal way to manage the 4D feeling range. When we use polarities to navigate 3D, we can handle our connections with archetypal dramas, such as the battle between Christianity and Islam. Rather than be pulled back and forth by dead-end archetypes, the West is good, Islam is evil, or the reverse, we can process and balance our personal beliefs and not be sucked into dualities. Individuals who balance polarities and unitize dualities are grounders in 3D, since dualities are false and dangerous divisions in the collective that can infect 3D. Here is how any one of us can function as a grounder and balancer of our dimension by means of the 6 polarities. When we balance self-other, we have a clear sense of self while we are in harmony with others. We cannot destroy the lives of others just because we want something for ourselves. When we balance grounding, letting go, we have what we need for life in 3D, and we let go of anything we don't need. We stop consuming the world because we don't need so many things. When we balance personal integration with spiritual integration, we are effectively in contact with those connected with us, while we are free to tune into spirit realms. We stop disappearing from reality when we get in touch with spirit, and when we are communing with spirit, we are still connected in 3D. When we balance feeling power, we are very sensitive to others when we use power. We cannot lord power over others because we can feel how they feel about life. When we balance creating, giving, we create what we came to create, and we find ways to circulate our gifts. We cannot avoid expressing ourselves because we are continually impulsed to share this joy. When we balance be here now, bliss, we are in the now while flowing in bliss. We stay in a high state of consciousness by staying in our center. This simple paradigm offers self-mastery. When we live this way day after day, we are grounded in 3D. We can feel and enjoy the 4D forces as they participate in our minds, and it is fun to observe the great archetypal story. It is a weaving made of all our thoughts and feelings that connects us with everyone else. This is living every day, comprehending the collective flow of meaning in the world, flowing in the great story of time. The fourth dimension, the world of myths and archetypes. Opening meditation. Ask yourself, do you know feelings that come from inside yourself, and feelings that come from outside yourself? Do you know feelings you have created, for yourself, and feelings others created, for themselves? We all have many feelings. All I am asking is, can you sort them out a bit, instead of feeling them as one big ball of feelings? Can you follow the threads back to their source? Pick a big feeling. Any big feeling. Whatever comes to you at this time. It could be just a feeling, or a feeling with an image attached. Go ahead. See what comes to you. A good way to do this is lying on your bed, or the floor, or out on the ground where no one will bother you. Put your hands behind your head, cradle it. Good. Now catch that feeling. No matter what it is, catch it. See what it is. Okay, now take that feeling, and any image attached to it, and make it bigger. See it from all sides. See and feel what it does inside your body, especially to your solar plexus. Your solar plexus is like the face of a drum, it sounds when you strike it with a drumstick. Boom, 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 boom. Do you have a big feeling? Are you feeling it at your drum belly, your solar plexus? Are you seeing any images, or feeling any other feelings attached to this feeling? If so, follow them, make them bigger too. It is like a big knot, that you can only untie when you make it bigger, just like a knot in your shoelace. Take your time. Feel space opening in the knot as you untie it. Breathe, remember your body, your own energy, and this is only an exercise, an entertainment, a learning experience. Are you beginning to see this giant feeling? To really feel this giant feeling? Can you find where it is coming from, where it started? Can you see how you can change it by knowing where it began? How it will go away once you understand how it got there? Sometimes this is hard, and sometimes this is not too hard. Take whatever time you need. If you think this is more than you can handle right now, stop, and find your breath, find your body. Find your way back to gravity, to your feet. If you want to continue, continue, and let the learning begin. Once you know where the feeling is coming from, see how you can change the feeling, how you can make it go away by understanding why it got there in the first place. Maybe there is some action you need to take, and it will take away this feeling. Maybe it is someone you need to speak to tell them how bad they made you feel. Or maybe it is someone you need to say you're sorry to ask their forgiveness. That's okay, too. All that matters is that the feeling goes away and stops pounding on the drum at your belly. Write something down, if you like, or take a sip of water. Once the feeling passes, the pounding stops at your belly, you know you have succeeded. Smile to yourself, and know you can do this again anytime one of those feelings gets going in your body. The more you do this, the quicker, more efficient you'll be at getting to the source of what's bothering you. Notice how nice you feel, how relaxed, how safe you feel. Good work. And once you have read about the fourth dimension, you may want to return to this meditation again. The fourth dimension, 4D, is the realm of the human collective mind, the amalgam of individual thoughts and feelings that meld and weave into archetypal patterns that connect all people. This dimension holds the memory of human events throughout time, which is why you can imagine the life of a shaman living in the Amazon, or the life of a queen of England hundreds of years ago. According to the Ps, the keepers of 4D are the Anunnaki, also, Ananaj, a race of divine beings who founded water management and agriculture many thousands of years ago in the Middle East. 1. The Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian records describe the Anunnaki as gods and goddesses who intervene in human affairs as teachers and guides. They show up in some ancient creation epics during and after wild cosmic catastrophes to assist struggling human cultures. These epics are the earliest written records of divine beings that have guided, possibly even created, our species. Also, these beings remind me of the archaic Greek gods, who intervened in human affairs and were involved in great cosmic dramas that affected humans. After many years of contemplating stories about these mythological gods and goddesses, I think the P's say that the Anunnaki are the keepers of 4D because the Sumerian records are some of the most ancient sources that report on the antics of the gods. These stories later appear in Akkadian and Babylonian sources and then eventually in the Hebrew Bible. This is to say, these beings seem to be our earliest memory of our creation and survival. The fourth dimension contains myths and stories over many thousands of years, thus its sense of time is immense, much greater than the time sense of most humans. This data bank is the same as the popularly known Akashic records, the records of time that omniscient humans, such as certain saints, gurus, and clairvoyants, can read like a book. My personal consideration of the Pleiadian identification of these 4D dimensional keepers has been a great challenge, just as 4D is a great challenge for most people. This is because some modern writers have concocted some very bizarre stories about the Anunnaki, such as claiming they were extraterrestrials, but the original sources that describe these beings do not support this idea. Point 2. Regardless of the truth, the Anunnaki and the planet or star they are said to come from is currently the source of great fear for many people. This is very silly. Once again, here is the ages-old device used to cower people into fearing God and the end of the world. Point 3. I am harping on this point because this confusion is actually a misunderstanding of the dimensions. 4D is feelings, 3D is physical. Because 4D feelings are so intense, they seem to be real for some people. Ultimately, I've concluded the Anunnaki are actually a central control device of the global elite, a program used to found religions that control the human race by inciting fear. This 4D program may go back more than 10,000 years, and it became very dominant 5,125 years ago, when civilization appeared all over the planet. This God program is currently behind many Judeo-Christian beliefs, so these programs are the main subject matter of this chapter. This is not an easy or pleasant subject, but the truth must be known in order to free humanity in 3D. From our perspective on Earth, the fourth dimension is the first non-physical yet emotionally detectable dimension, which makes it very confusing for most of us. This dimension seems to be a world filled with great gods and goddesses, angels and demons, and dragons and kings, who are involved in grandiose dramas that few people are conscious of except when they are dreaming, or maybe spacing out on video games or movies. In fact, these great beings, such as Zeus and Yahweh, must be creations of somebody's clever mind, since they are so easily used to fool and demonize humanity. Supposedly, these archetypal gods aren't around here very often, especially not recently. They may or may not have ever been physical in our dimension, yet once they were invented many people couldn't seem to forget about them. Sometimes I wonder if the coming end of the Mayan calendar signifies a time when most people will see exactly how 4D influences our minds and cultures. Whatever this is about, my task is to accurately explain the Pleiadian dimensional wisdom, which in this chapter is to understand the purpose and source of these strange 4D keepers. The P's say odd things about 4D, for example, that the 4D gods and goddesses want to be deeply involved in the actions of our bodies, as if we are merely puppets dancing on heavenly strings. Like lost children who have not yet faced the gravity of life and death, we humans seek lame answers from these immortal parents. Thus, even though they are not solid in 3D, Hollywood makes fortunes on them. Maybe human neediness is what keeps these gods alive. However, this has become very tiresome because it creates very negative patterns on Earth, such as wars, slavish religions, and a demonic media. Meanwhile, the few people who are not blindly ruled by these gods have figured out how 4D archetypes influence 3D, and they use this knowledge creatively. We spend a lot of time with our students decoding the influence of these great gods during activations. The classical Greeks unmasked their own archaic gods by making hilarious mockery of them in comedies and mystery plays, and then their culture went to a higher level. For the classical Greeks, humans, not the gods, were the sovereign creators of 3D. The astral world and divine levels in the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is a live and participatory zone, the astral world between 3D and the stars, that is filled with messages from divine beings. This zone receives all the messages coming from the higher dimensions, which is why we feel such intense emotions about 4D archetypes, such as the gods. Yet, we can receive these messages directly in our hearts and minds when we see clearly exactly how 4D belief systems influence human cultures. For example, the ancient Egyptian teachers could see that 4D is often a very charged and confusing zone in human minds, so they developed an imaginative animal totemic theology that shows how the gods interact with humanity. This theology is what allowed ancient Egypt to be a balanced and happy culture for thousands of years. Basically, 4D activates our feelings, which then split higher dimensional information into positive or negative possibilities. When you see how this dynamic functions, you can see that 4D is just a big creative game that connects us all. Messages from higher dimensions are the source of human creativity, which 4D intelligences split into dark and light possibilities. This process informs our feelings in 3D, so that it is possible for us to encompass the magnitude of the higher dimensions. Many humans choose to learn how to ignore these juicy impulses, since acting them out might change their lives. Those who do strive to see, hear, feel, and interpret these messages often become powerful creators and/or psychics. They seize the moment. Great artists are adept at bringing magnificent ideas into form, and poets, painters, sculptors, and even politicians live and breathe these grandiose archetypes. They use the richness of 4D to fertilize 3D like avid gardeners. Of course, the elite are masters of these archetypes, masters of 4D symbols. As for the archetypal beings, we humans are the creators in 3D, since we can make solid things. Fourth dimensional beings can think and plot all they want, but they cannot create anything solid in 3D. So they seed their hot desires in our minds and incite us to create realities they want, but we must choose to be the masters of our world. For example, hapless and confused teenagers play out the killing tendencies that lurk in the adult collective mind, as with the Columbine massacre. Wars are a great collective mind zone, and so are corporations because they collect power in the hands of the few. No wonder most people try to deflect juicy 4D impulses, yet if more people would become masters of their own reality, they'd be artists, not warriors. If a person's emotions are not under control, 4D energy takes on a low astral hue, such as by visits of angels, succubi, monsters, ETs, or the Virgin Mary. These visitors seem very real on the screens of our magnetic minds of ancient archetypal images, especially for adolescents who are learning so much about their personal feelings. Some people are triggered and driven mad by such visions in 3D, while others are simply fascinated. Spiritual masters and artists learn to distinguish between low astral impulses and true divine inspiration. I believe we must all become spiritual masters now, so that we can create what we want in our own dimension. Otherwise, the New World Order is going to run it, ruin it, or both. Certainly, what I have just said might cause some readers to wonder about the possible risks of gazing at electronic screens all day and night, and also about drugging teenagers. When contacts from subtle worlds arrive in 3D, overpowering emotions run through our bodies. We can respond by simply following our feelings, yet here I am suggesting we follow the path beyond insanity by using our minds to observe these feelings. It is the nature of archetypal forces to seek vehicles in 3D for their inspirations. This possession process rises and falls, and it is increasing exponentially during the closing days of the Mayan calendar. This is because scientific materialism denies the reality of archetypal impulses. Excessive rationalism frustrates and overamps the beings in 4D, a dangerous distortion that always blocks human creativity. Bad energy collects in 4D like noxious gas when higher worlds can't penetrate 4D and then circulate in 3D. Eventually this unused energy pools in chaotic black forces in people's minds, like overamped electrical circuits that blow fuses. Denied astral forces are especially attracted to people who are drugged. The percentage of people who are drugged legally and illegally is very high in the United States, making it easy for the elite to control people. Nevertheless, we humans are the chosen circulators of divine inspiration in 3D. If you are bored with your life, you are not tuned into your fullest potential. Wonderful things result from working intentionally with divine forces that birth art, visions, and sacred cultures. The New World Order conspires to dumb down humanity so that it can run the world. Modern culture, especially American, is boring, uncreative, and hideously violent because it is polluted with discharging dark energy. Meanwhile, we can choose what we want to create in 3D because we have free will. At any time, we can choose to open the flow of the rich archetypal stream by creating sacred cultures that are filled with art, theater, music, and laughter. Some cultures, such as the Australian Aborigines, channel the archetypal stream by dreaming. Others, such as the Minoans with their bold dances and labyrinths, expressed it in mystery plays. These potent forces flow easily through indigenous children who are raised to be very creative. Their elders know that blocking these forces makes the group violent. By allowing these powers to inflate, they become weird independent thoughts that weaken the group. Eventually, this black force overwhelms people, and waves of collective insanity and sickness arise, such as making war. Indigenous people are often respected for medicine practices that clear astral pollution that is causing sickness, yet they really prefer simply creating most of the time, since creating is more fun than curing. Ecstatic sacred cultures, such as the ancient Egyptians, the Maya, Minoans, and Celts, spring forth when masses of people just respond to the need for change in the collective mind. Conversely, when enough people suppress the 4D forces within themselves, then very dark, violent, and destructive cultures manifest. At this time, Earth's people are screaming for an end to global domination and violence. Yet screaming for peace doesn't work. Only by circulating the archetypal stream does peace return. Sometimes artistic cultural breakthroughs start with humor and comedy, like the Greek plays of Aristophanes. The P's say, the real problem is God poison. Too many people on Earth are waiting for the gods to return, which keeps us from caring for our own solid world. The fourth dimensional canopy of light. The fourth dimension looks like a murky canopy over individuals, cities, cultures, and countries. This astral energy resembles gooey frogs' eggs that healers can often see in their clients' bodies and auras. During the Bush-Cheney reign, 2000-2008, the astral canopy over America thickened and felt very oppressive. I use this recent 4D collective insanity because it is such a great example of a possession by black forces. Just as it did during the rise of Hitler in Germany, the whole world watched America with grave concern during those years. Normally, 4D canopies are constantly bombarded by waves of energy and light from the higher 5 dimensions, see figure 4.1. When higher dimensional energy rushes into the curved 4D canopy, the canopy acts as a lens that splits thoughts and feelings into two possibilities, positive or negative, good or evil, black or white, right or wrong, and so on, such as in the consciousness of the person on the table, see figure 1.3. When people express only one side or the other of an issue, their minds split, making them unconscious, possibly because the 2D magnetism in the Earth's curved crust is responding to overamped 4D electricity in the atmosphere. The 3D electromagnetic EM fields are constantly responding to the 4D splitting dynamic of the collective mind, which can confuse, narcotize, or hypnotize the public. Yet, without this dynamic, things would not solidify into vibrating EM fields in 3D. Many people can feel this charged astral force, and some can even read its contents. Figure 4.1. The 4D murky canopy bombarded by waves of energy from higher dimensions. Our embodiment comes out of pure energy. When we have learned to allow archetypal forces to flow through us, our bodies easily resolve wide polarity states. The EM fields in our minds expand, following the natural law of expansion and contraction. We can all learn how to differentiate between astral influences and higher dimensional inspiration by observing both sides of issues to perceive the full range of information. Once we've figured out the dancing archetypal game, astral influences can't divide our thoughts by canceling out one side of an issue, and this increases intelligence. The 4D issues in our minds are collective, yet we may not realize that millions of other people are processing the same thoughts. For example, these days millions are exploring a polarity I call Judeo-Christianity versus Islam. Some split this archetype into good or evil, safe or dangerous, or right or wrong, while others seek to understand both sides to become conscious. As the drama unfolds, more and more people tend to become conscious and intelligent. The elite continually dresses up the issues in new costumes, and if they manage to strongly charge a huge unprocessed shadow, then the dualistic forces assemble into a collective insanity, a maelstrom. During the end of the Mayan calendar, the Judeo-Christian Islamic polarity has become the maelstrom because the age of Pisces during which these religions developed over 2,000 years is completing. Unresolved layers of history are being dredged up for the final appraisal. Those who are polarized, not stuck on one side or the other, process these old memories by releasing judgment about others. For more than 5,000 years, the global elite has been using powerful 4D tools, such as Yahweh and the Devil, to further its agenda, the New World Order. The Romans and the Vatican materialized these forces at the beginning of the age of Pisces, and they have been building a 4D collective belief in Yahweh against the Devil for 2,000 years. 4. We are in the early stages of the age of Aquarius during the end of the calendar, and the elite conspires to take over 3D so that it can run the planet for the next 2,000 years. At times like this, the P's say it is easiest to just allow the potent 4D forces to flow through your consciousness, and to avoid being caught in dualities. When the great ages change, higher dimensional inspiration is very strong, and you can receive it in a non-reactive state of mind. When you block the archetypal stream by rigidly holding your beliefs in one place, 3D shreds into manifold dualities as if a dragon or rabid dog is thrashing the canopy of light. Your M-fields contract, and then you lose the divine flow. By being lazy, stupid, and intoxicated, humans are harlots for the elite. If we give our power away, a great rending of reality occurs, and the third dimension devolves into a maelstrom, the whirlwind, which 11,500 years ago was a geological disaster. This time, a religious whirlwind has been building, like a tornado of flaming angels. Meanwhile, great opportunities that were not taken up 2,000 years ago, such as the real teachings of Christ and Muhammad, can be claimed by anyone. Judeo-Christianity versus Islam is the big epic movie premiering during the end of the Mayan calendar and the age of Pisces, but it is a very old film. Hidden within the secret caves of the world religions lie the seeds of the sacred cultures that created them in the first place. When the people first detected these seeds, the canopy of light was diaphanous as higher dimensions flowed through and illuminated Earth. 5. Then when the elite constructed the God program to take over Earth, the people were enticed to kill each other for the sake of God. As long as the people are split into opposing camps, the New World Order will froth up global conflict by inciting conflict between the world religions. For those readers who are on one side or the other, remember the elite does not care who gets killed, only that it wins. To comprehend more about the 4D mechanics and how humanity might have gotten into such a mess, it is time to investigate 4D science. Science is often a mirror of culture, especially as we saw during the 20th century. The science of the fourth dimension. Quantum mechanics (QM), or the new physics, is the science of 4D on the vertical axis. 6. QM studies the properties of light, the microscopic world of atoms and molecules. The discrete energy units, quanta, function as either particles or waves, and mechanics is the study of their movement. QM discovered that light functions as either particles, photons, or waves, frequencies, which fundamentally dualize matter. Since our thoughts are received through 4D, the reception of frequencies in our 3D brains is split by the very nature of the subquantum reality. I am suggesting that particle-wave duality is the inherent cause of dualistic thought patterns in our minds. It is an electromagnetic phenomenon. A total revolution in physics has occurred since 1900 that is reflected by what's in our minds and what's going on in the world. Yet most people do not understand this breakthrough. Our 3D world is adrift in all the things the new physics has invented: televisions, computers, microwave ovens, and cell phones, yet most people don't know how these things work. Most people don't think about what QM technology creates in the world. Meanwhile, technology will be the main evolutionary theme of the coming 2000 years, which is during the astrological age of Aquarius. The QM revolution in early 1900 was the scientific beginning of the age of Aquarius, since it began with the exploration of frequencies that are ruled by the planet Uranus, which rules Aquarius. Being able to imagine material things as visible light encourages us to think in many dimensions, so, the global elite wants to retard public understanding of the laws of frequencies as long as possible. We are supposed to be obedient consumers who buy cell phones without thinking about what they're doing to our brains, or are to watch TV so the elite can run its political programs. Many of us find it very hard to comprehend how the forms of M radiation, such as radio waves, microwaves, and infrared radiation, are the same dynamic as light in the visible light spectrum (VLS), since physics is usually poorly described in our schools. See Figure 1.2. Once we realize that all matter is made of particles and frequency waves, they realize that our brains are wired to detect these frequencies. Since chairs are solid in the VLS, you will bruise your knee if you run into it. Then what are the radiant cellphone waves doing to your brain? What do microwaves do to food? Intentionally reading frequencies is the ultimate freedom, yet these new technologies could capture us in the darkest prison, a world in which nature is totally manipulated. The fact is, physicists live in strange universes creating ever stranger gadgets, while we don't understand how the things they are inventing actually work. The QM revolution is the cause of the mind-boggling speed of change in the world and in our minds during the last 100 years. The elite is going to be in charge unless we figure out how we want to use this revelatory science. The world according to Newton, 3D science, was predictable and understandable. We were able to visualize its laws and understand how things work. During the Newtonian period, individuals could comprehend reality without undue effort. With QM, light can be either particles or waves which you can't see, and the individual can only predict what light will do by probabilities. Probabilities are simply tendencies for things to happen, which is easier to understand since life is actually like that. The 4D collective mind is a great big probability range, so knowing the probability laws makes the solid world more predictive. The impact of the QM revolution is awesome because QM has been used for making the most successful numerical predictions in the history of science. The world according to Newton makes us think of nature as a machine, when in fact nature functions by probabilities. On a given day, this or that might happen, and we can see this by watching events. QM explains much about the enigmas in nature. It is an incredibly exciting field of study that opens our minds beyond the mechanical universe. Next, we need a quick refresher on modern physics, just to be sure we know what we're talking about here. Point 7. QM is based on the four key forces: electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces, and gravity, as now defined by physics. The M force binds electrons and nuclei, the strong nuclear force binds quarks, which make protons and neutrons, the weak nuclear force causes nuclear decay, and gravity is the weakest force, yet its influence is effective at greater distances than the other three. The quanta or particles of electromagnetism are photons, particles of light, that have infinite range and no mass. Light as frequency waves functions over the entire M spectrum of radio waves, microwaves, infrared light, ultraviolet light, X-ray, and gamma rays. See Figure 1.2. Gluons, quanta of the strong nuclear force, keep quarks glued together inside protons and neutrons. Leptons and hadrons are the quanta of the weak nuclear force, which causes radioactive decay and nuclear reactions in stars, such as supernovas. The quanta of gravity are thought to be gravitons, which have not been found, and gravity has had little effect on experimental verification. Gauge theory, which attempts to unify all the forces except gravity. Gauge theory is dependent on gauge symmetry, a mathematics that determines the effects of sequences of transformations of objects in time and space. Regarding the particles, they all have antiparticles, particles of the same mass but opposite in some other way, such as electrical charge. When a particle meets its antiparticle, they annihilate each other to produce more energy. Electrons, neutrinos, and quarks make up the ordinary matter of the universe, so I will focus on them. The other two groups, muons and taus, are very unstable or short-lived. Electrons are the basis of the flow of electricity. Neutrinos are very interactive because they can travel through other matter, even all the way through Earth, which means they probably carry 1D and 2D information. Quarks are fascinating because they have electrical charge and can be three different colors, the primary colors red, yellow, and blue. Quarks have neither structure nor spatial dimension. They have not yet been observed in particle accelerators, but there is much evidence for their existence. Some people can see auras as color envelopes in three color ranges, so maybe they are seeing the quirk of the quarks. When I think about these particles, great space opens in my body, since this 4D subquantum field is less solid than my 3D M field. Contemplating this dancing world tends to open my heart because the subquantum field is very creative and chaotic. In fact, various aspects of QM seem fifth-dimensional. Of course, each dimension morphs up to the next one, and each has lower and higher qualities. Certainly, QM beautifully describes how 4D dualities widen to polarities out of our consciousness in 3D. Regarding the unity of 5D above the duality of 4D, our reality flows in 5D waves, the dimension of absolute unity and synchronicity, where all particles are relational. For example, J.S. Bell proved in 1964 that two particles that have been split apart communicate by telepathy. They are connected in an immediate and intimate way, which shows that the universe has consciousness. David Bohm's theory of the implicate order or unbroken wholeness 1970 demonstrates that the dynamic relations of particles depend on the whole system. That is, it is impossible to analyze the world by separating its parts. Scientists can mimic parts in nature, but this does not explain our world and the cosmos. In fact, the solidification of reality probably happens only in our minds. The new physics shows that we live in a holistic and telepathic world instead of being stuck in a Newtonian machine. From that perspective, it is possible to imagine how the universe might work. Non-scientists can understand the universe and realize how they move in the flow by studying QM experiments. A fantastic and clear explanation of this dynamic is in Itzhak Bentov's classic book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum. This has been a very brief summary of the fundamental particles and forces in the universe. The new physics has resulted in incredible technological advances, for example, decoding the properties of light, especially lasers, and discovering the microscopic world of particles and waves. The bifurcation of particles and the existence of antiparticles mirror the human tendency to live in duality instead of polarity, which causes people to be violence-prone. People annihilate the people who most closely mirror their own behavior, just as particles and antiparticles annihilate each other when they meet. With QM as the bedrock of modern technology, materialistic science has been largely reduced to inventing formulas that create destructive technologies, such as the atom bomb. This is a dangerous situation. We must all comprehend these basic forces now that scientists have created the bomb, a hideous materialization of the Yahweh archetype. The question I ask is, are scientists responsible for the results of their own theories and experiments? Often these inventors act like they are 4D creator gods who may use nature any way they please. However, QM is not higher dimensional physics, nor is it cosmological. For an authentic cosmology, we must contemplate the nature of the universe in higher dimensions. The universe will never be found in particle accelerators, and our brains can perceive and integrate much more than accelerators and computers can. Our thoughts can travel faster and easier without cell phones. Newtonian physics describes how things obey the laws of gravity, motion, and events in a way we can visualize. QM does not. This is because Newton's laws are the real laws of 1D to 3D where we live, QM is the law of 4D, and cosmology operates in 5D through 9D. The revelation of the subatomic world by the new physics shows that our brains translate frequency waves. The collective 4D mind is a huge screen of frequency waves that we detect and read in our heads, if we learn where to turn the dial and how to adjust the volume, like radios. Measurements in QM can only be done by probability distributions, which is exactly how the collective functions. In fact, the more you understand probability, the more you can think clearly and use intentions to direct your actions. You can tune in good stations, instead of bad ones. This is a big deal, because as the Ps noted earlier, 4D beings as well as other higher dimensional beings want to be involved in the actions of our bodies to experience the frequency waves. Newtonian laws are easier for us to understand because we see them operating in 3D and we can picture them in our minds. However, 400 years ago Newton put our consciousness in a mechanized box that we are only getting out of now. As we now begin to comprehend the new physics fully, our consciousness expands just like the universe. It is time for everyone to study QM to take power back from the elite and to end the abuse of nuclear forces. Our split consciousness is partly trapped in a mechanistic mentality, while another part is reacting to a new vista that ripped open only 100 years ago. Without the larger whole being rediscovered in the new physics and in the teachings of higher mathematics, we would just sit in the box with the clock ticking away. Let's return to studying 4D directly through our human experience to see more about how it works. Life in the Oreo cookie. In my introduction, I noted that sometimes we feel like the center of an Oreo cookie, sandwiched between the lower realms of Earth and the emotionally and mentally charged realms of the collective mind that's constantly changing according to what's plugged into it. For most of us, 3D is an intensely charged arena with our bodies sandwiched between 2D magnetism below and 4D electrical forces above. We already know quite a lot about how 2D affects us, so now we need to understand more about how 4D actually impacts us in 3D. We can feel what is going in our world and discover ourselves mostly within relationships. The Wheel of 12 bisected into 6 polarities, see Figure 3.1, teaches us to balance ourselves with others. It is the best tool I've found for detecting how 4D feelings influence our activities. It teaches us how to read our own fields, or become self-reflective. Using the wheel reveals whether you are balanced or not regarding the key issues in your life, which means seeing these issues as either polarized realities interrelated or as dualized realities separated. Furthermore, when you are balanced, you are firmly located in 3D, which means you are grounded. The fourth dimension vibrates much faster than 3D, causing it to churn and split energy. Therefore you must maintain constant vigilance to be grounded, especially during a maelstrom, such as was triggered by 9/11. These times are like being caught in a tornado, and it is difficult to know where to run. Great change is occurring on manifold fronts, so, most people are profoundly ungrounded, not solidly located in 3D. Living in the world today is often like being in a particle accelerator. People are fearful in their minds because they are churned up by fast-moving events to which they aren't even connected. The Wheel of 12 helps us be islands of peace amidst the gathering storm, making it easier to ignore the spin control plots of the elite masters. Maybe you are dealing with intense personal issues, such as holding a comfortable sense of self while involved in an intense new primary relationship, and politics and modern science may seem very far away. However, most people cannot avoid the collective issues that will shape the whole 21st century. The maelstrom sucks everybody in and entices you to get stuck in one side or the other. For example, if you are an American, you are stuck in duality if you think your country is good while Islamic fundamentalists are bad, or vice versa. Feeling this way makes you angry, judgmental, and fearful, which blocks subtle consciousness. If you are on one side or the other, you will miss seeing your role in the awesome and gripping drama that is unfolding. On the other hand, if you experience opposing forces as interconnected, you are seeing them as a polarity. The final sorting out of the real story of how religions have been used by the global elite to control the world during the age of Pisces is utterly fascinating. If enough people can figure out the game, we can take our dimension back. Each one of us has a choice now. Either be unconscious and get sucked into the 4D maelstrom, or be aware and create a new world in 3D. If you choose to be conscious, you can follow multidimensional cues and avoid being 4D pawns. This is not about the roles people play, it is about where your consciousness is. You might play a role as an anti-war activist or as a bomber pilot, and you might seem to be on one side or the other. If you are balanced and processing your own actions, then you attract new possibilities in your life from the frequencies you radiate. This is what keeps 3D from being swallowed up by the elite, whose favorite scorecards are battlefields and morgues. As we approach the age of Aquarius, the elite has a great plan, the New World Order, to control the whole world. You are sovereign in 3D when you are conscious and creating new possibilities, or new timelines. Then multidimensional forces flow through your body, such as knowing how Christ and Muhammad really lived during the age of Pisces. To summarize, let's review the difference between a dualized reality and a polarized reality. When polarized, the two sides of an issue are in resonance and interconnected. They link different dimensions, which expands possibilities. For example, as the battle between the world religions progresses, millions of Jews and Christians could immerse themselves in sacred Islamic art and study the Quran. Muslims could study the life of Christ and offer more of their own knowledge about this revered teacher, which could offer new information for most Christians. 8. After all, Moses, Christ, and Muhammad were born and lived in the Middle East, not in Los Angeles. If the three major religions studied the ethical teachings of their own teachers, they might notice that they all condemned war. When dualized, the two sides of an issue are split, so that one side cannot see the humanity of the other, like the Israelis and the Palestinians, who are each manipulated into attacking the other. Because people are separated, the elite froths up the differences between their beliefs while making blood money on weapons. None of this is worth the life of one person. Split realities destroy intelligence and kindness, and investing in violence is suicidal. You can feel yourself caught in a duality when you have an excessive charge on one side or the other, when you just know you are right making somebody else wrong. Let us go through the 6 polarities through the lens, New World Order, NWO, versus Islam, the drama currently being choreographed by the elite. This archetypal conflict is exceedingly confusing because it goes way back in the past, yet it has mysteriously appeared again because it was not adequately processed before. Secondly, let's see how this duality functions as a polarity. This is written for American readers because the US has taken the lead, but it can be viewed through the lens of any culture on the planet.